Move to table.
Mr. Martinez-Fisher to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Look, this is a passionate issue, but it's not an issue to get upset about. I just want to level set here, because when we talk about minority voting rights, we are talking about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. When we're talking about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, we are talking about jingles, which is a 1986 U.S. Supreme Court opinion. But all the conversation today is about Petaway, which is a more recent circuit opinion that has not been scrutinized by the U.S. Supreme Court. So what we are doing, in effect, is we are following a theory based on law that is not settled, and we're throwing out well-established jurisprudence that's been applied since 1986. That's all this does. And I take the chairman, if he says that he told his lawyers that we're going to follow Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, great. But I've heard a million times on this floor, nobody speaks for me. And if someone is going to take a position on something, I'm going to take it myself. I'm not going to say what he said. And that's all this amendment does. It's simple. It just says that we are going to follow Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That's it. There are no tricks. There are no hidden words. That's all it does. It shouldn't be controversial. If that's the instruction Hunter has given his legal team, then I'm shocked that that's not the instruction he's given you to take this vote. He should be saying, members, don't worry about this. You can vote for that. We've already told the lawyers to follow Section 2, so this is a nothing burger. This is acceptable to the author. This is not in controversy. So I don't know what the issue is, but if we do believe that the Supreme Court establishes the law of the land, if we do believe that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is current law as validated by the Supreme Court, then we should not have any issue accepting the proposition that this map is done in concert with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So I hope you vote against the motion to table, and if there's not a record vote, I'd like to have one.
Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose?
will the representative yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions.
Representative Yields.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you, Representative. Hey, and I appreciate you bringing up the Jingles case, and as it relates to your amendment, and you're familiar, obviously you're familiar because you've cited to it several times and said that you haven't heard anything talked about the Jingles case, and you recognize it's the 1986 case where that analyzes vote dilution claims, and you understand that there's a three-pronged test that you go through. You're familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And have you we've talked about the Petaway case. Have you had an opportunity to read the Petaway case?
Not in its entirety, no, but
Okay.
I've read the opinion and the relevant parts that apply to this debate.
Okay. And you understand that a Fifth Circuit ruling is binding on the, absent some ruling otherwise by the U.S. Supreme Court, is binding on the state of Texas.
I think it's partially binding. I guess what you're saying, if the Petaway opinion says that you cannot force a state to create a coalition district, there's nothing in the opinion that says that the state, couldn't adopt one, right? So,
Okay.
So it's in conflict. So to the extent that there's a portion of that that is being applied in this map, I don't see the other part of it is just because you can't force a state to do it, that there's no reason why that they could do it if they wanted to.
When you're in your partial reading of the Petaway decision, do you recall page 7 of the opinion where it stated that the court addressed coalition districts, sure, and addressed that to the very first prong and said it doesn't meet the first test, we're no longer going to consider that, then therefore we're not even going to get to prong number 2 or prong number 3 because the Jingles case is not applicable. Did you read that part of the opinion?
Representative, if you are referring to an opinion where you have a page in line and you want me to give my thoughts on that page in line, would you have the courtesy to present me with the page in line so I could read it myself?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Speaker and members, as I was saying, we're just talking about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We're talking about something that's well established by the United States Supreme Court. This is not a gotcha. This is a pretty easy vote. Since 1970, the state of Texas has had a very difficult time passing a redistricting map that wasn't found to be illegal by the DOJ or by a court. We don't have a track record of success. We will show up in court and these questions will come up. Taking a record vote that you were not willing to state with a vote that you would follow Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, I think is a litigation flag. And so in light of that risk, I would ask for you to vote against the motion to table so that we can adopt this amendment. I urge you to vote no.
Mr. Martinez-Fisher sends up an amendment. Mr. Hunter has moved to table. The question is on the motion to table. Clerk, ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye, Mr. Martinez-Fisher voting no. Mr. Pursuit voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 87 ayes and 51 nays. The motion to table prevails. Flores, for what purpose?
I'd like to ask to have the comments or the exchange between Chairman Hunter and Representative Hawkins, Gervin Hawkins, reduced to writing in the journal, please.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Members, this is a friendly reminder. We are considering amendments now. Debate must be limited to the subject of the current amendment. Please hold your questions about the bill until Mr. Hunter comes back to close on the bill. The following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Martinez-Fisher.
Chair recognizes Mr. Martinez-Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, again, not a trick here. This is pretty simple. We're in mid-August. If this legislation were to pass and get signed into law, we'll be in the courtroom. In November, folks will start filing for office. Elected officials need to know what districts they're going to run in. Voters need to know who they're going to vote for. Secretary of State and local election officials have to do all of the behind the scenes to make sure the paperwork is in order. This is pretty simple. Should this get tied up in the courts, which is highly likely, all this amendment says is it will run in the current districts that we have today, which are the current districts that were adopted in 2021, which are the current districts that are currently being disputed in a federal court in El Paso. These are the current districts that Senate leaders and witnesses in federal court said were perfectly fine and race blind and had nothing to do with violations of voting rights acts or any gerrymandering or coalition building. These were perfectly good maps. So all this says is, should we find ourselves in court, instead of pausing an election, instead of moving the goalposts on our constituents, we'll just run in the districts that we have right now that are currently elected, have currently elected the current Texas delegation, which was good enough for the 2024 election. They might as well be good enough for the 2026 election, should this map run into legal controversy. And with that, I hope that the amendment is acceptable to the author.
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Does a quorum do away with the requirement for a call on the House?
No, it does not.
So the rule,
Mr.
Parliamentary
Dutton, for what
inquiry, Mr.
purpose?
Speaker.
State your inquiry.
So the Speaker can put out a call on the House irrespective of whether a quorum is present or not.
Mr. Dutton, there was a motion and the body placed a call in the House, and it provided specifically that it would expire upon the passage of House Bill 4. So the call remains in force until the motion expires by its own terms.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
do you consider that legal?
Mr. Dutton, the rules provide that a call in the House is appropriate to maintain a quorum.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Well, by your statement, that means that if a quorum is maintained the call is void.
Obtaining and maintain are two different things.
Obtained and maintained is two different things. I'm not sure that's a word difference, Mr. Speaker, but parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
What's the difference between maintained and obtained?
Obtain is when you do not have a quorum and you're trying to get it. Maintain is when you have one and you're trying to keep it.
So, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Dutton, state your inquiry.
So the rules are there so you can maintain a quorum, or I thought they were, when I read the rule, it says to obtain a quorum.
Mr. Dutton, the rules provide that a call in the House may be placed for a specific period of time. The body adopted a motion, it was adopted, and it expires upon its own terms.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Jones, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know the dollar breakdown for the DPS officers used to monitor each of the members 24/7?
The chair is not advised.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
What would be the best way to find out that cost to taxpayers?
House administration.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Hunter in opposition.
I'll be moving to table because we don't need a TRO or a stop to the map. I'll be moving to table.
Mr. Martinez-Fisher to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, so if I understand this correctly, Chairman Hunter is very confident about this map. Not going to be a problem. We're going to pass it, becomes law. We have new districts. Great. Perfect world, works out. This amendment doesn't apply. Let's say Mr. Hunter makes a mistake. Let's assume for a minute that somebody makes a credible legal argument that says we're going to tap the brakes on this proposal. What we're saying is we're going to let a court decide what to do. We're going to let a court decide what do those districts look like, when is the election scheduled, and how we're going to administer this election. I don't think that's the way we ought to do it. I think we ought to have control over it. This is a circuit breaker. This is simple. This says if this does not go the way Chair Hunter wants it to go, that we're going to run in the current lines, which again, I mean, the last time I checked, has a pretty healthy delegation, has sufficient partisan splits that were good enough in 2021, and for what it's worth, seem to be good enough for those who drew it, because that's their testimony in federal court before a 3-judge panel. And we all know this. We know it's probably not a good idea to lie or mislead a federal court, because they'll actually put you in jail. So I believe that testimony when those proponents say that these maps are legal and fine. If we want to cede our authority to a court, I know many of you have some strong opinions about that, about courts legislating from the bench. But if you want them to legislate from the bench, well, then let's not put a circuit breaker in here. Let's just throw it up, see what happens, and let it be what it's going to be. But my preference would be that we have some control over our own elections. We have the ability to let our constituents know what these lines look like. There are a lot of districts that are a little uneasy as to what their congressional district's going to look like. This just provides that peace of mind. It's pretty simple. Doesn't harm the map. It does nothing to the map. And should this map pass as Chair Hunter would like it to, then these lines mean nothing on the page. So with that, I ask you to vote no on the motion table.
Mr. Martinez sends up an amendment. Mr. Hunter has moved to table. The question is on the motion to table. This is a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Show Mr. Martinez-Fisher voting no, Mr. Hunter voting aye, Mr. Dutton voting no, Ms. Wiener voting no, Alverson voting aye, Ms. Suit voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 87 ayes and 49 nays, the motion to table prevails. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Dutton.
Chair recognizes Mr. Dutton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, there's one thing that's come out of the debate today that everybody, I think, here understands, and that is whether or not this bill denies or abridges the right to vote on account of race or color. There's one side that says it doesn't. There's the other side that says it does. And so what this amendment does is simply add some accountability to this measure by simply stating that until a federal district court issues an order determining the changes one way or the other, this law will not take effect until that happens. And so if you agree that it abridges the right to vote on the basis of race or color, you ought to be for this amendment. If you're against that, if you think it doesn't do that, you really ought to be for this amendment. Texas has been in redistricting court fights over every decade since the 1970s. On numerous occasions, Texas has been found to have passed unconstitutional and intentionally discriminatory maps. As each and every one of you know, the maps we just passed in 2021 is still being litigated for potentially discriminating against Black and Latino voters. We might as well let the courts take a preemptive look at these maps to ensure that we don't waste any more time than we already have. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to yield to any questions that my colleagues may have.
Ms. Cole, for purpose.
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman
I
yield for
yield.
questions. He yields for questions.
Thank you. Representative Dutton, one of the criteria that we look at to determine whether a map preserves or protects communities of interest, I want to explore the map on this criteria. Can you explain to us what the residents in East Austin have in common with the residents in Port Aransas?
Well, again, what I say is one thing. What I think Chairman Hunter would say is something else. It's just the opposite. And so what this amendment says is that, wait a minute, we're going to make sure that we get this right by letting the federal court decide what the answers to your questions and the questions that many people have here. That is the only way I can consider that we would not waste a whole lot of time in terms of getting whatever maps that this body wants to pass completed and done with. And it ought not to be a process that ends and begins here, but it ought to be looked at by the federal courts.
Okay. Can you explain how representatives of communities and interests in perhaps North Austin have in common with the residents in East Texas?
Well, again, my argument would be one side, and I think Chairman Hunter's would be another. And so we're not going to resolve that in here, except that typically the majority, 76 votes, means that this thing can pass. And I suspect that's going to happen today. But I do not think that's the last stage in this process. And so what I'm suggesting by this amendment is that we make sure that we have got it right by ensuring that the accountability provided by a federal court overlook is in place when we pass this map. And so that's what this amendment does. It says that we're going to put the federal courts in this. We're going to actively put the federal courts in it because we can passively do that already. Because I'm sure somebody will go and pass or at least file an objection to it. But this body ought to recognize that there is a difference of opinion in terms of answering your question and the questions of many people here about whether or not the rights of Black and Latino voters are abridged by this map. And we're not going to decide that here. This map may get voted out, but that's not a decision about whether this map is or isn't. And I think we ought to put the federal courts in it to make sure that we get it right.
Well, we know that Austin is the capital of Texas and it is a booming city. East Texas has a dearth of hospital access. Are you aware about that, that is the case in Austin? That it's not the case in Austin?
Yes.
Also, East Texas has different economic drivers than Austin. Does it not?
I believe that's the case, yes.
Austin is often ranked as one of the top cities in the countries and is sought after by many corporations, as it's known throughout the world. That is not the case in East Texas, is that correct?
Well, that's one opinion, and that's what I'm saying is, irrespective of whether my opinion says that I believe East Austin and East Texas have anything in common at all, or whether or not the other side says that they have everything in common, that makes no difference to me. What makes a difference is having the federal court's oversight look at this and make the determination as to whether or not we are actively, not passively, but actively engaging in the abridging of the rights of Black and Latino voters.
I agree with you, Mr. Dutton. Now, one last question on this. I believe that Austin and East are not communities of interest, so don't you believe that East Texas should have appropriate representation in D.C.?
I believe that about all districts. I believe that about all areas of Texas. I believe that the real question for us here is whether or not we can make that happen. And if one side feels that we have and the other side feels that we haven't, there is going to be an independent determination made, and that's going to be made by federal courts. And what this amendment does is simply says that we're going to put the federal courts in this at the start of this bill as opposed to after the bill is passed, but we're going to say today that this map, whether it may be this or it may be that, we're going to let the federal courts in it so that when the federal court makes the decision, then that's when this bill can take effect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Jones, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for a couple questions?
Yes.
Gentleman yields for questions.
So throughout the debate, the author has made it a point to overemphasize how not racist and how this bill does not impact communities of color. But I just want to ask, particularly for the Dallas-Fort Worth region, are you aware that in North Texas, the population of Dallas and Tarrant counties together have increased by over 500,000 residents over the last decade, and it was all, not just some, Hispanic, Black, Asian, and other minority groups?
Yes.
And also, are you aware that the Anglo population in Dallas and Tarrant County has dropped by over 90,000 people, or about 60,000 in Dallas County and about 30,000 in Tarrant County?
Yes, I am. And that's the point I'm making, is that if you look through it through the eyes from which you're looking, you'll come up with one conclusion about what's going on and what needs to be done. What I believe the other side is doing is looking through another lens and suggesting that that's okay under the law. Well, I think the only way we know what's okay under the law is to have the law take a look at it, and that's the federal court's job, and that's why I'm having this amendment, to make sure that the federal courts are in this bill so that this bill does not take effect until the federal courts have made a decision. In fact, one of the cases, the Purcell case, which says that it stands for the proposition that if you get a change in election law to the courts too late, it's too late. It means that if you get it there too late to effectively do the changes by the federal court will basically ignore it. And so what this does is says that we're going to put the federal courts in it so that the federal courts will decide the issues that have been raised here, whether or not they are in fact one way or the other.
Well, thank you so much for that, Representative Dutton.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Bowers, for what purpose?
I'd like to ask the gentleman's time be extended.
Members, this is a motion for the first extension of time on the amendment layout. Is there objection? Chair here. Hey, okay, there's a record vote has been requested on the motion to extend time. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye. Show Mr. Dutton voting aye. Show Mr. Basook voting aye. Show Mr. King voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 118 ayes and 15 nays, the motion prevails. Ms. Bowers, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield for question? Just one question.
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Dutton, when it goes into communities of interest, just a quick question. What interest does the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex share with the Panhandle, if any?
Well, I'm probably not the best person to answer that because I must admit I don't know a whole lot about the Panhandle, but I suspect that the answer is going to lie not with me, but with the federal courts. The federal courts are going to make that determination, and they're going to take a look at this and determine, again, whether combining communities of disinterest is appropriate. They have said so in certain cases, but I don't think the question you're asking is one that's on point with the case that's been decided. And so what I'm suggesting is that we ought to make sure that the federal courts are ingrained in this bill so that they can actually make this determination that both sides, I think, want made.
Yes.
Because I don't think one side is saying it's a racist map, the other side is saying, well, race didn't play a part in it. It's all political partisan. Well, you know, you could, as a lawyer, I suspect that depending on who paid me, I could probably argue either side. But the point is that we need an independent accountability for this bill, and that's the only way we're going to get it is through the federal courts. And so we might as well put them in this bill and make sure that this bill doesn't take effect until we've had that federal court decision. And that's what this amendment does.
Thank you for that. I mean, the simple answer is not a darn thing.
Probably, you're right. You're right. And whether or not that ought to be considered in terms by the courts is a whole separate matter. And so that's why everybody ought to be voting for this amendment.
Thank you, sir.
And I move adoption of the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Mr. Hunter in opposition to the amendment.
Members, I'll be motioning table. It's an unnecessary step, and we don't have kind of a pre-clearance anymore, so I'll be moving to table. Thank you.
Mr. Dutton sends up an amendment. Excuse me, Chair recognizes Mr. Dutton to close on the amendment.
Thank you. I respect Chairman Hunter's designation that we don't have pre-clearance, but that's not necessarily what I'm asking to do. What I'm asking is that if one side thinks this is the right thing to do, it shouldn't be a problem having the federal courts decide it. If the other side says that we don't like it, then they ought to be acceptable of the federal courts making the determination. And to be opposed to it would almost suggest to me that you believe something is wrong with this, and that something wrong is the fact that perhaps the other side's contentions are more valid, and so as a consequence, you don't want a federal court to look at it. Well, I think you ought to be for an independent look at this so that the issue of accountability is placed in this bill such that we have a federal court not only look at it, but make the decision as to whether or not one side is right, the other side is right. I trust the federal courts. You've had several arguments from the back mic from both sides about what federal courts have said. This is an attempt to give the federal courts an opportunity to say whether or not this bill is valid and whether or not it abridges the rights of the people of color, both black and Latino citizens in this state. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I know we don't have pre-clearance, but we ought to have a predisposition to making this right. And so with that, I move to vote no on the motion to table.
Mr. Dutton sends up an amendment. Mr. Hunter moves to table the amendment. The question is on the motion to table. If you're in favor of the amendment, vote no on the motion to table. If you are opposed to the amendment, vote yes on the motion to table. Record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Dutton voting nay. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 85 ayes and 49 nays, the motion to table prevails. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Howard.
Chair recognizes Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. This is an amendment that says that does not allow the bill to go into effect until an independent redistricting commission has been established. Members, what is happening on the floor today is a blatantly obvious attempt to determine the outcome of the upcoming midterm election before a single vote is cast. Those who vote in favor of this bill will be supporting a process that has been engineered to dilute the power and voices of voters of color in Texas. With the push of a button, you are taking the decision away from the voters of Texas. But where I come from in Texas, we're proud of our independent-mindedness and believe in our right to self-determination, which is why I know there is no reason why Texans should settle for a redistricting process that does not let us make up our own minds. Today's proceedings are proof that the legislature should not be responsible for drawing these maps. It's clear that when left to do so, the legislature will abuse its power to silence the voices of its constituents. House Bill 4 targets congressional districts that have historically been held by Texans of color and eliminates the community's ability to elect the candidate of their choice. Here in Travis County, the proposed maps would eliminate our only court-ordered minority opportunity district created to protect the voting rights of people of color. In 2017, a panel of federal judges ruled that 3 of our congressional districts, including CD 35 here in Travis County, were illegal and violated the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution. As a result, Texas was forced to redraw the maps to ensure Texans of color received fair representation in Congress. Now this body seeks to eliminate that district and strip black and brown voters in Austin of their voice in Congress. As many of you know, I have called Austin my home for my entire life. I spent my youth in and around North Austin, my young adulthood in Central and East Austin, and have called West and South Austin home for the last 50 years. I know my community better than anyone who drew the lines on this map, and can assure you that districts drawn from urban Austin through rural communities extending to Louisiana, Port Aransas, and the New Mexico border do not reflect communities of interest. Instead of strengthening black and brown representation in Congress, which would better reflect the true ethnic and racial makeup of our state, this body seeks to dilute their power and eliminate their voice. Therefore, the most responsible and ethical vote we can take today is to pause this sham process until an independent redistricting commission has been established. Doing so will ensure the people of Texas have a voice in this process and can help guide where and how their districts are drawn. True representation and fair access to the polls are the foundation of our electoral system because in a democratic society, ultimate accountability occurs at the ballot box. As elected officials, it is our duty to represent the people of Texas and be their voice of government. And as members of the People's House, we are supposed to have our fingers on the pulse of our communities. District lines that include disparate communities hours apart from one another do not allow for fair representation. The only reason to include them in the same district would be to dilute their power and voice in Congress. HB 4 is a blatant attempt by a handful of elected officials to choose their voters because they are afraid their voters won't choose them. It is clearer than ever before that how and where voting lines are drawn have a direct impact on a community's representation in government and its ability to influence change. I urge you to vote in favor of this amendment and show your constituents that you value their voice over currying favor with your political allies.
Mr. Speaker.
And I yield for
Ms.
questions.
Hinojosa, for what purpose?
Will the representative yield for questions?
Yes, I will.
The gentlelady yields for questions.
Representative Howard, let me make sure that I understand what your amendment does. What your amendment would do is take away the power from the politicians to draw their own districts and the districts of their buddy politicians and give it instead to an independent commission that consists of the people of Texas. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and we have a bill that's been filed that would do that.
And whose bill is that?
It's Representative Johnson's bill.
Okay.
Johnson's bill.
And is this an issue of first impression for you, Representative Howard? Have you heard of this before, these independent redistricting commissions?
Yes, I've actually filed legislation for an independent redistricting commission basically every session for over the past decade.
Thank you, and I have signed on to your legislation. I appreciate that effort. Are you aware that the Independent Redistricting Committee protect minorities from illegal cracking and packing of their districts?
Yes, I am aware.
And isn't that in fact what is happening in this bill, the cracking and packing of minority districts?
It certainly appears that way, and we certainly have an example of it here in Travis County.
And in fact, minority districts are targeted for elimination in this bill, aren't they?
Certainly in Travis County, that's the case.
In Travis County, we have 2 congressional districts, is that correct?
Who has 2 congressional districts?
Currently, there are 2 congressional districts in Austin.
There are actually, I guess I'm trying to understand the question.
Okay.
Because there's several congressional districts that are part of Austin.
Okay.
But we have 2 right now that are Democratic districts, yes. And one of those is the court-ordered Minority Opportunity District, and it is no longer a part of Austin in this map.
So it is eliminated. The one Minority Opportunity District is eliminated, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And of course, you and I both live in Austin, and so that is an issue of interest to us. Are you familiar with Congressional District 34, which is also significantly altered in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, where I am from?
You'll have to explain that to me.
So currently in Congressional District 34, that community has chosen Vicente Gonzalez as their member of Congress. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
That's in South Texas. And did you know that in this bill, in that district, almost 70,000 new Anglo voters are added to that district, while at the same time, almost 25,000 Hispanic voters are removed from that district. Were you aware of that?
I was not, but that does sound like it's diluting their representation.
Do you know what the majority ethnic population in Brownsville, which is the large city in that district, is?
I can imagine that it is Latino.
It is over 95% Latino and growing in terms.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Up. Let's do one more chant. Let's give these guys their content. All right? Woo! The people united will never be divided. 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 Woo! Our last speaker. Our last speaker is a great example of what can happen when we elect organizers. Give it up for Congressman Greg Casar.
Let's be clear about why we're here. Donald Trump is the most corrupt president in American history. Ken Paxton is the most corrupt politician in Texas history. And they want their corruption to run amok unaccountable without ever having to face the voters. It's the same old story. These guys who think they have all the money, so they can claim all the power and are willing to try to rip up our democracy and suppress voters in the process. Just a couple years ago, I went to the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, which, of course, Congressman Green was so eloquently talking about. We were on the bridge, Edmund Pettus Bridge, that crosses you from Selma towards Montgomery. And I got to speak with a woman who was there the very first time. And I said to her, wow, what an honor to get to be here for the 58th anniversary of the crossing of this bridge. And she stopped me and said, no, honey, this is just the 58th time that I've had to do this. And she told me the story of how the first time they tried to cross the bridge, that fateful day in March, they had 600 state troopers and dogs and hoses pointed at them. And they got pushed off the bridge. But then they decided, a few days later, to march again. Despite all the violence, despite all the pushback, they decided to march again until a court and a judge said they had to get off that bridge and they were pushed back. And then some of their fellow activists were even killed at night after that second march. And that's when John Lewis and Dr. King said, no, we're going to march a third time. And they crossed the bridge and got from Selma to Montgomery and got LBJ, a Texas president, to sign the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to ban maps like the one being heard in the Texas House today. So let's be very clear that she had to march those 58 times, and we are here marching the 59th and the 60th and the 61st time right now here in this rotunda. Because just as they tried to push those marchers back with dogs and state troopers and hoses and intimidation, here we are in Texas, while they threaten to arrest people like Beto O'Rourke, while they walk people like Nicole Collier into the House chamber, as they go to a judge and threaten to remove all the Texas Democrats from office unilaterally. It's the same story. It might be a different decade, but it's the same story. We are in a historical moment. And the question before us is, even after this vote today, or the next vote next week, are we going to be the generation that gets pushed off that bridge and doesn't march again? No, it has been put onto us, the responsibility onto us, to form a more perfect union, to never give up on voting rights, to never give up on our democracy, and never give up on one another. And through this fight, you have shown the nation exactly what that looks like. So we want them to hear that in the House chamber right now. We're not going back. 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 The only way is forward, even when it feels like they're pushing us back. It's because they're afraid, because they know we're on the verge of something new. They can see amongst all of us people being mobilized across the state of Texas that have had it with a corrupt governor and a corrupt president and a corrupt attorney general. And when we send the Greg Abbotts of the world to the electoral dustbin of history where they belong, alongside the George Wallaces and Governor Shivers, once we send them back to that electoral dustbin of history, we won't stop there. We will build a Texas where we get big money out of politics once and for all. Where we ban gerrymandering in all its forms. Where we get rid of corporate PAC money. And once we have unrigged that political system, we can finally have a democracy that works, that takes care of flood victims and school students, a democracy that makes our minimum wage a living wage for every single person. Maybe we make sure that health care is a human right with a Medicare for all system. Make union rights a human and basic right. And instead of blaming our neighbors who are immigrants or women or queer Texans, how about we expand people's rights? Give people a right to a pathway to citizenship in this country. Restore the right to abortion care in Texas. And yeah, I'm ready to say it. Let's have a government where people get to elect and unelect their leaders. No president, no politician gets to make this decision for you. That is the fight we're all in. And so, y'all, I am so proud of our state and of this city. Because in the harshest of conditions, when people said there was no way we could even slow this down, that the governor would get what he wanted in a day, quietly in the night. You have shown people what democracy looks like, and we're not slowing down. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show them what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Okie dokes, y'all. We are not done. This is an all-day event. We are here to hold these folks accountable, even if they don't want to. After the vote, we will be having another press conference here, so please stay tuned. Please be here. We have volunteers everywhere with signs where you can check in and get updates as they happen. We will keep you informed. And right now, we're going to show them what democracy looks like, and we're going to head to the gallery while they're discussing what our map looks like. All right? If they forgot that Texas is a democracy, we're here to show them, all right? Woo! Thank y'all. My name is Stephanie Gomez. I'm with Move Texas. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so tired. He stole my chance. Thank you. You're like so good. I was like, damn girl. No, that was really good ham. Afterward, House Democrats were joining. And there was also something that was flagged that I wanted to see if you guys could confirm for me, that you guys might be able to. But it's with the League of United Latin American Citizens and other groups representing minority voters are asking the federal court to set aside a time in September for a hearing. I don't know if there's anyone you know that can help confirm
We
that.
could definitely ask around.
Okay,
There might be someone, but we haven't heard of that as of yet.
Yeah, because I know because they're trying, you know, with the lawsuits.
Hi, I'm
Chloe. I'm Steph. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm with the Texas Young Democrats. I just wanted to say that that was a great press conference.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And what time is the next one?
So once they vote, so probably around 3:30.
From the state of Texas. A CVAP study is a study of the racial and ethnic data of the measured area, in this instance of the state of Texas. If this is not done, we will be using data from Census 2020 for this mid-decade redistricting, data that is outdated from 5 years ago. CVAP studies are done every census, but we have no updated census data currently. The United States Census is a nationwide count of every person living in the United States. It is meant to provide comprehensive data on the population's size, age, race, ethnicity, housing, and family structure makeup of this country. Typically, before any redistricting occurs, the country takes a census to determine what changes have occurred, which is why redistricting is done right after the census, like we did in 2021. However, for this rigged mid-decade redistricting scheme, there is no new census or even data being collected. Let's change that. This amendment mandates that the Secretary of State conduct a citizen voting age population study of the racial and ethnic groups of this state. Furthermore, the results would be publicly released by the Secretary of State before the last day to file as a candidate in the primary election held in 2026. And will also contain recommendations for legislative action if necessary. Republicans say that this rigged mid-decade redistricting scheme is not based on racial grounds. So let's find out. There should be no issue with this amendment if this new map is not based on racial grounds. This amendment would be beneficial because it could lay to rest any claims of racial gerrymandering once and for all for this proposal. Please support this amendment for a CVAP study. Let's make sure we have the appropriate data to understand the impact of what we're doing here during this unprecedented and uncommon mid-decade redistricting.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Moody, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for some questions?
Does the gentlelady yield for questions?
I yield for questions.
Gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you, Representative. And in laying out this amendment, you talked about the accuracy of data. You specifically referenced accurate population data. In fact, your amendment calls for a CVAP report to be produced. You would agree with me that it's fairly important in the redistricting process to have updated and accurate information, isn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And specifically, when we're talking about what your amendment does, and that directs the Secretary of State to gather this CVAP analysis, that is not something that is uncommon, right? That actually does, that happens when we go through the census process and the following redistricting process following the census.
Absolutely, that's correct. We're essentially just making sure that whatever is typically done in the census prior to when we typically redistrict is in fact being done through the CVAP study.
And so I think just so that we can go through this, the data you're trying to drill down to, and for those of us who have kind of worked around this policy area before, CVAP is a term that we use and stands for Citizen Voting Age Population. So we're not talking about the population, we're not talking about voting age population. We are then talking about probably the smallest subset of that, which would be citizen voting age population within those congressional districts that are being proposed here. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you further bracketed that to talk about looking at those numbers as it's based on racial ethnicities.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and being part of the redistricting committee, and I did this work back in 19 and 21 as well. We heard a lot of testimony about the growth of the population in this state, and that people of color make up 95% of Texas's recent population growth. But the map that we're seeing today, and again, we don't have the data that your amendment would provide, it creates more majority Anglo districts. Is that your understanding of the map that we have in front of us?
Yes, that is correct.
And I know that we've had a significant amount of conversation about what is driving the drawing of these maps, and that the claim is that there is no racial gerrymandering, and it's important, right? If racial gerrymandering is prohibited, and so the claim here is that that's not being done. Are you aware that that's the claim that's being made as it pertains to this particular map?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I think drilling down to the core of your amendment, you were saying, if that's not what's going on here, then let's see. Because we don't see the CVAP numbers for these racial ethnicities. We are not seeing the CVAP data as current today. We are only seeing it as a snapshot of 2020. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's only been 5 years that have passed since the census. Clearly, Texas has been growing in population. We want to make sure that the CVAP reflects, as far as that the particular redistricting that's going on right now, the mid-decade redistricting, in fact, is not racial gerrymandering.
Yes, and so I think that it's always best to be accurate with data, particularly when we're talking about protected, we have legal protections around certain types of gerrymandering. However, we're operating without that most current information. And if this didn't have those impacts, your amendment would actually allow us to bring that to light through the Secretary of State, and it would actually bring it to light before the filing deadline when these maps become effective.
Yes, that's correct.
And then secondarily, though, your amendment has a component to it that states if there are things that need to be mitigated after that Secretary of State report, there then is an opportunity to fix those. So even in the event that there is something that happened here that we don't know because we don't have the numbers, that would give an opportunity to alleviate those concerns around racial gerrymandering. Is that correct?
That is correct. The actual amendment itself indicates that after the creation of the report, that the Secretary of State can, in fact, not only report the results of the study, but provide recommendations for legislative or other action to correct any issues.
In your opinion, how important is it for the people that we all represent to know, to have confidence in the fact that there is not racial gerrymandering going on here?
I think it's incredibly important, and more than anything, I know we in particular continue to keep talking about the cases that have come out of the U.S. Supreme Court. We want to make sure that this particular map does not violate both Section 2 of the VRA as well as the 14th and 15th Amendments as well.
And so the CVAP data that you're after here, to bring everything up to date, to say this is what Texas looks like today, that would be able to verify what's going on, what's underneath this, and if there is any racial gerrymandering going on. Is that the purpose of the amendment?
That is correct, and that's all that we're asking for, is just making sure, since we don't have a recent census and therefore redistricting based off that, we in fact compile the data that's needed to confirm that in fact these maps are not being drawn on racial lines.
And because certain racial groups have protections under the Voting Rights Act, is it your belief that having this CVAP data does in fact protect people's rights here in Texas under the Voting Rights Act?
Absolutely, I do.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Hunter in opposition. Thompson, for what purpose?
I want to know if the gentleman yield.
Not just yet.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Members, I'll be moving to table. The purpose of this amendment is to get the Secretary of State to get involved into data and census. And to me, it is basically another delay process. So my view is I'll be moving to table. Now I'll answer questions.
Thompson, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Thank you.
Yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask you just three things and I'm through. Was that any consideration in looking at the Congressional District Number 9, the HCVA, the Hispanic voting age population in 9 after your substitute? Because it seems to show that they are barely 50% of Hispanics in that area. Was that by accident?
No, the data shows that the substitute made it at 50.15.
Okay,
so
then,
it modified.
Okay, then, and I also noticed, and that was some changes made in splitting precinct 414 in 4 different ways. At 4 different times. And what was the purpose of splitting that precinct those 4 different times?
Personal knowledge, none, just the criteria.
So you don't know what kind of...
not specific knowledge.
Okay, then, so that was, the criteria was considered in, you don't know what criteria was utilized?
The council looked at all the criteria. I personally did not.
But you're not aware of what was that criteria that caused the splitting?
No, ma'am.
And lastly, there was also a splitting of precinct 533 and 386 in that area as well. Do you know the purpose of splitting those precincts?
Same answer on that.
You don't know what data may have been considered?
No, just relied on council and they went through everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Move to table.
Seat Hernandez to close.
Thank you, Speaker and members. I understand that Representative wants to do a motion to table. All we're asking here is that we make sure that the maps that in fact are being drafted are not infringing on and illegal in violating both Section 2 of the BRA as well as the 14 and 15 amendments. This is not anything different that's done during the census prior to whenever we typically redistrict. And so all we're asking is that the CVAP study be done and that it be done in a timely way, that people are aware of how it impacts them prior to the last day of filing for the primary for congressional candidates here in the state of Texas. So I would ask respectfully that all of you vote in making sure that we are transparent, that we are making sure that we are not violating these laws, and that we are making sure that Texans recognize that we are not in the business of silencing our communities and our people. I respectfully ask that you vote against the motion to table. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez sends up an amendment. Mr. Hunter has been moved to table. The questions on the motion to table, clerk ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye, Ms. Garcia Hernandez voting nay. Have all members voted? Mr. Alcott voting aye. Have all members voted? 87 ayes, 52 nays. The motion to table prevails. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Bernal.
Chair has Mr. Bernal.
Mr. Speaker.
Pursued for what purpose?
Raise a point of order against further consideration of the Bernal Amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane.
Bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment has been withdrawn. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Questions for the author? Be polite, be a gentleman.
Amendment by Garcia of Dallas.
Chair recognizes Ms. Garcia.
Ms. Speaker.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr. Speaker. Members, my amendment is straightforward. This bill would not go into effect until Congress enacts legislation to make Social Security solvent.
I raise a point of order against further consideration of this amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane.
Bring your point of order down front. The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment's been withdrawn.
Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Jones, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Did you know how many members accepted DPS supervision over the last 24 hours?
Chair is not advised.
Do you know that each member was assigned?
Purpose?
Oh, my apologies. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know that each member that was assigned a DPS supervision had 2 members assigned to them 24 hours a day?
Chair is not advised.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker?
Jones, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know, or was there an account taken of the assignments that DPS officers were pulled off of before being assigned to surveillance members of the Texas House?
Chair is not advised.
All right. Last question. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Do you know that the tasks that were assigned previously to being assigned to members were high-level investigations, sex crime, as well as fraud division officers were pulled to surveillance House members?
Chair is not advised.
Thank you.
Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Lalani.
Chair has Dr. Lalani.
Mr. Speaker.
Proceed for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of the Lalani amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that it is not germane to the bill.
Bring your point of order down front.
Thank you.
The point of order has been withdrawn. The amendment's been withdrawn. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment. Mr. Wu.
Amendment by Wu.
Chair recognizes Mr. Wu.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Kane, for what purpose?
I raise a point of order against further consideration of this amendment under Rule 11, Section 2 on the grounds that the amendment is not germane to the bill.
Bring your point of order down front. Mr. Kane raises a point of order against further consideration of the Wu Amendment, Amendment number 11, under Rule 11, Section 2, on the grounds that the amendment is not germane to the bill. The bill changes the composition of districts for the election of members to the United States House of Representatives. The Wu Amendment makes the effective date of the bill contingent on a matter that is not even remotely related to the congressional redistricting. The amendment is not germane. Accordingly, the point of order is sustained. Following amendment, clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Y. Davis of Dallas.
Chair recognizes Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is an amendment that I'm bringing forward to the body because I think we have kind of gotten off pace, and I just want to understand, make sure that we understand that we passed a redistricting 2021. For the most part, more than 80% of this body was a part of that bill. Maybe 85% of us are the same ones who passed this bill in 2021. So I'm bringing this back for consideration because I think it's important that you realize that the tweaks that I made are amendments that we offered during that time. But I don't know why we're changing something we did in 2021. Chairman Hunter presented a redistricting bill. This body voted on it. We considered the facts that you have to consider where it deals with all of the guidelines. I'm just wondering, why are we changing this bill? Why are we doing this again? And so I'm wondering, when did this notion that we now don't consider communities of interest, we don't consider breaking up political subdivisions, this winner-take-all approach that says we're gonna, because we can, we're gonna diminish the presence of districts that have been here. So I'm just wondering, why wouldn't we go back to what we did as a body? Are these Texas decisions or somebody else's decisions? Because we did this in 2021. So my map, C2165, basically puts people back together. They talked about coalition districts. Well, the map that you presented creates coalition districts already. Your map that Chairman Hunter has today creates coalition districts. So we know there are some form of coalition districts you can have. Notwithstanding what the Justice Department said, there is a way to have coalition districts. It's just how we define them. And I would submit that your map allows them, if they are coalition districts between Hispanics and Anglo districts, and Hispanic and African American districts are unacceptable. Again, this issue of race continues to be some of the guiding factors that's leading us to this divide. As Texans, we have had 4 congressional seats for African American districts to represent the African American community in the state of Texas, beyond our geographic, but also the state of Texas. And we're now going to diminish that, knowing that our population, African American community, has grown. We're going to put a map in place that would diminish it down to 2. Just doesn't make sense that if Texas is who we say we are, one state for Texas, why then would we eliminate districts where minority representation is diminished? We cannot have a state where we believe that we would minimize the impact of every voter in this state. And we know this map does that. So this amendment basically clarifies that the districts that we're pairing, because we have pairings, but we have much fewer pairings than on the map that's being presented today. We did not break up communities' interests. We made sure that we limited the splitting of counties, all of the factors that would make Texas as strong as possible. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, members, I'd ask that you consider what's good for Texas and for Texans. How do we do what's right for Texas? And this map would at least maximize what you all did in 2021, and I say you all because you were the majority then, and it allows us, other citizens in Texas, to have a presence because we are here as well. And so I would just encourage you to look at the growth, the population growth, and how we move districts to support the growth of this state. We're all one, we say, but yet we're willing to take away from districts, take districts away. So I would ask you to consider Congressional Plan C-2165. It creates African American districts and Hispanic districts at CVAP 50 plus, so we meet the standards that the Justice Department has says we need to do. It does fewer pairings. We pair many less districts than the current map before us. So again, I think this is a compromise of how do we maximize the presence. You still, as a majority, have maintained the presence that you created in 2021, but it allows us also to maintain and recognize the growth of the communities across the state. With that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption.
Mr. Basu, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
Young lady for questions?
Sure.
Shields for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I take it from your layout, it's your contention that this amendment complies with the Voting Rights Act. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I looked at the data for the 2024 election for Donald Trump in Texas and looked at the partisan performance of these districts that you have put together in this plan. Would it surprise you to learn that this plan that you've put together would give 16 seats that perform in favor of Democratic candidates in your map? Would you dispute that? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware that it does give 16 seats. In fact, it says it's just the opposite. We understand it to be different than that.
So when I looked at the 2024 election result data, it showed 16 seats with more than a 50% partisan performance, and that would be an increase of 3 seats over what is currently there. Are you aware of that?
I'm thinking your data must be different than mine.
Sure.
And therefore, because we see it as 12 Democratic seats versus 16.
But let's assume with me for a moment that it is 16. That would be 42% of the seats. Are you aware that the Democratic Party and congressional candidates in 2024 only got 40.39% of the vote?
No, I just suggested that I think we have different information because we don't have 16 seats. And according to the data we have, we say it only takes us 12, so I don't have that same information.
Understood. We'll take a look at the data. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Glenn, for what purpose?
Will the lady yield for questions?
Young lady for questions?
Yes.
She yields for questions.
Ms. Davis, can I ask where this map came from?
Yes, it came from my office. We've done redistricting for the last 30 years, every cycle, and the interim cycle that we did redistricting as well, it came from there.
Okay.
If you will notice, it would be the map that I presented in 2021. I don't know if you were here, you might not have been, but for the last 30 years, I've presented maps to maximize the presence so that African American voices can be heard in Texas through their governmental process.
This map is the same as a previous map that you filed?
With some additional, yes. We filed this in 2021.
It's the same one. Did you hold any public hearings on this map?
It was brought to the floor, and it didn't. It was information we pulled together from our constituents. So we didn't have. I wasn't on redistricting to have the hearings. We didn't have hearings around. It was presented when Chairman Hunter was chairman of redistricting. He didn't allow us to make presentations, so it was brought to the floor.
And when did you file this map this time?
It was filed when we first started having redistricting first came up.
Okay.
I don't know the actual date.
Okay. Did you receive any outside counsel for this map?
No.
You didn't work with anybody? Okay.
No. Let me tell you who I work with. I work with the constituents and members that we've worked with this over the past years in terms of trying to ensure that we capture districts that represent the people of the state of Texas. So no, I don't have an outside counsel. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a lay person who has worked on this and continue to believe that Texas can do better.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that several members on the floor today have questions and influences that are coming from third parties, scripted questions, from influence from the NAACP?
Well, would you be surprised? You'd be surprised that in the last 30 years at every redistricting I've offered maps, because my person in my office works on maps over the years. Would you be surprised about that? This is not a new thing for me. This is something I worked on continuously. So I haven't needed to get outside counsel. I'm involved in the community, the state, and redistricting over the years.
In the hearings, the redistricting hearings, a lot of the testimonies that we heard were about some of the odd shapes and the stretched districts, but a lot of those are maintained in your map. So did you consider compactness of the districts?
We did.
Whereas some of the districts that were the most concerned had a distance across that was less than half a mile.
Okay. It's like the one that they're drawing here in the maps that you're presenting that go the whole length of Texas, that go from Austin down to Port Aransas. I was much more compact than that. And they were drawn much more compact than that. We don't have one that leaves here and goes to West Texas.
I'm looking at several that are stretches.
Don't know what you're looking at.
Erratic shapes and some stretches.
That's long been an issue with regard to redistricting, and I can assure you our maps are much more compact than the ones that we're considering on the map that the chairman is presenting today.
Are you aware that the current map actually does fix a lot of more compactness, and it also draws the lines on natural boundaries, keeping counties whole? The natural boundaries, it's not, a lot of the cities are no longer cut in half.
But you have some that still are.
Okay. Did you have this map reviewed by any federal oversight to make sure it's in compliance with the Voting Rights Act? Okay, thank you.
I don't have the luxury of a law firm drawing my map and bringing it to me and say present it. I didn't have that luxury. What I have is a staff person who has consistently for the last 40 years been involved in redistricting and making sure that we look at how we get the best representation for all Texans.
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I move that all the remarks on House Bill 4 be reduced to right in the place of the journal.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, may the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes.
Time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move for an extension of time.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? There's a record vote requested on all motions today. Clerk, ring the bell. So Mr. Hunter voting aye. King voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 110 ayes and 23 nays. The motion to extend time prevails.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Reynolds, for what purpose?
Would the gentlelady yield for questions? Well.
Does the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes.
She yields for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Davis, refresh my memory, what does your amendment seek to do?
Actually, we seek to maximize the growth and development of the communities that live here in Texas. We had a base map. I took the base map that we passed in 2021 out of this chamber to make sure that we comply with the rules of engagement as it relates to the redistricting process. And we looked at ways to ensure that we didn't minimize and not take away from any of the constituents. So this map seeks to do that. So one of the challenges that they brought forth with redistricting is that the CVAP and the Justice Department said that they need to be 50 plus. So we attempted to make that 50 plus for these districts we're presenting. The amendments to, that's all we did, was to comply with what Justice Department said.
So just so we're clear for purposes of this discussion, your amendment is based on the census data from the 2020 census. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that for redistricting, the normal course of redistricting is after we get a census every decade?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that based on the 2020 census, that 95% of the growth in Texas was based on the growth of minorities that included African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics, the Latino community? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so your map attempts to reflect that growth in minority populations. Is that correct?
As well as the growth, but as well as adjusting the numbers in the districts relative to what the Department of Justice said was flawed in a map that we passed.
So one of the questions I want to ask, you indicated when you were being questioned by the previous witness, you indicated that you've worked on redistricting for the past 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so you know a little bit about redistricting, correct?
Just a tad bit. It changes. It's evolving. I never knew us to do this.
Is it unusual to have a mid-decade redistricting?
It is unusual to have a mid-decade redistricting plan. That has not been a practice. It happened one other time that I've been here. And as Chairman Hunter said, you can do it. But the question is, why are we doing something that we've already done? And we did this in 2021. And, you know, if we're not going to perfect it, why are we changing it to alter it to be more draconian on us and constituents than better?
Representative Davis, are you aware that the state of Texas has more African American population than any other state in the United States of America?
I am aware of that. This is the largest African American community across the nation.
And are you aware that currently there are 4 African American congressional seats in the state of Texas?
At this point, there's 4 and potentially 1 that we could do as a coalition district or as an emerging district, opportunity district.
And so if we can identify for the purposes of this record, you have currently the 9th Congressional District, that is Congressman Al Green. You have the 18th Congressional District that was previously held by Congressman Sylvester Turner, who is deceased, and the seat is vacant. You have the 30th Congressional District held by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and the 33rd Congressional District held by Congressman Mark Vesey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And those are 4 African American districts in Texas, correct?
That's correct. And what we tried to make sure in this map, our amendment adjusts the CVAP according to the challenges that the Justice Department had raised. And for example, we reduced in CD9 the Hispanic CVAP from 50.5 to 50.2 so that we would not, we didn't change it, we just addressed it.
And you say we addressed it. We addressed it to make sure it complied with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, correct?
That's correct.
And specifically Section 2, correct?
That's correct.
And would you agree with me that we've already heard from Chairman Hunter that the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 2 is still current law?
That is correct.
And isn't it true also that Texas in the past has been found to have intentionally discriminated when it came to redistricting against African Americans and Hispanics? Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, we still have a case pending from the seat from the maps from 2001 because we continue to have this problem with knowingly discriminating or creating a discriminatory map as it relates to African Americans.
And Representative Davis, isn't it also true that based on the current proposed map that you're seeking to correct, isn't it true that House Bill 4 dilutes the African American congressional representation by a whopping 50%?
That's correct, and that's what troubles me.
So we're reducing, even though Texas has more African Americans than any other state, and even though, based on the 2020 census data, we had an increase in African American population. We are now, based on this current map, instead of increasing it to reflect the population growth, we're actually decreasing it in half. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's the challenge here, is that we're now talking about minimizing and decreasing representation that we currently have. Why would we take a state that we were saying that we're growing and now we're going to take it down? So that's what this amendment does, is seeks to recognize the growth and protect the integrity of those populations.
And as I read I did look at your amendment. Your amendment seeks to not pack and crack African American and Latino communities. Isn't that correct?
That's right, because essentially what you're doing is saying, and this is kind of the challenge for us as Texans, we need to recognize that our communities are more interdependent and interrelated than they are. And so we cannot just eliminate districts because you don't vote that way. You've got to allow the representation of all people. And if you don't, you're going to be, they're calling it racial, political gerrymandering, but it amounts to being racially gerrymandering.
Well, Representative Davis, would you agree with me that the proposed House Bill 4 is a racial gerrymandered map?
And in the conversation that Chairman Hunter laid out, he said it's politically, but the impact politically has been, it is racially. So while it was political, it also had racial implications.
Right, it's a racial gerrymander.
We're trying to make sure that we don't put a map in place that is legally gerrymandering it.
Right, and so when you look at, and I want to hone in on House Bill 4, when you hone in on House Bill 4, it pairs CD 9 held by Congressman Al Green with CD 18, correct?
That's correct.
And isn't it true, based on your experience, that Congressional District 18 was first held by Congresswoman Barbara Jordan as the first African-American Congresswoman since Reconstruction that was
That's
only
correct.
after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, correct?
That's correct. And I want to mention 18 because 2001, we went through many discussions about restoring the integrity of 18 and the voters
Correct.
in District 18. So basically, we would be undoing what we just did in 2001 to District 18, CD 18.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I want to make sure that the record is clear on that. Back in 2021, it seems like I remember very vividly that then Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee had to come to Austin before the redistricting committee to talk about the unpairing of the 9th and the 18th Congressional District, correct?
That's correct.
They had Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee paired with Congressman Al Green, correct?
That's correct.
And we were able
the committee here reviewed, redistricted, and restored 18.
It restored it.
It restored it because they found that it made sense that it would be restored versus leaving that pairing. And now we're sitting here doing something the same thing.
Now we're doing it all over again,
Yeah,
correct?
That's correct.
I don't know about you, but I would imagine that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Sylvester Turner, Congresswoman Barbara Jordan would be turning over in their grave if they saw this. Would you agree with me?
I agree that is why it was changed in 2021, because we found it to be totally wrong. And here we are again doing the same thing. It's totally wrong today as it was then.
The lady's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd ask that you
Chair
consider.
recognizes Mr. Hunter in opposition.
You can't end yet. Members, I will be moving the table for the simple reason that I like my plan better than hers.
Mr.
And
Speaker.
just to be straightforward, but I'll be moving the table on this particular amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Reynolds, what
would the
purpose?
gentleman yield for 2 questions?
Sure.
Will the gentleman yield? Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter. I wanted to ask this question of my time ran out, but you can clarify this, Chairman Hunter. So isn't it true that under your proposed House Bill 4, Congressman Al Green, who is currently the congressman of the 9th Congressional District, under the new map, he is in the 18th Congressional District. Isn't that true?
Well, what he said in the hearings is he lives in 18, and so my thought was this is a great opportunity for him to run now in 18, but 9 is a newly created district. I don't consider that a pairing.
Well,
9 was one of the districts that we created.
Well, Chairman Hunter, with that, I'll have to ask you a follow-up question on that.
Ask as many as you want.
Okay, so you were there. You were the chairman of the Redistricting Committee back in 2021, correct?
Correct.
And you recall verbatim, because I recall talking to you, and don't you recall having a conversation with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, myself, Representative Sophronia Thompson, Representative Harold Dutton, that we wanted to not have Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee paired with Congressman Al Green. Isn't that true, sir?
We talked about that in 2021.
And did we not correct that, sir?
What's that?
Didn't we correct it? We didn't pair them, correct?
Hold on, Ron. We came on the floor, and there was an amendment.
Correct.
That the body adopted.
That is, well, you answered, so to answer the question, we fixed that with a floor amendment on the House floor, correct?
Well, you keep saying we fixed it.
Well, what I'm saying is...
Ron, we disagree. What I said at the very beginning is we've created 5 new districts. These aren't pairings. This is much different than 2021. Petaway is different. We've got Rotu that is different. So we have a lot of new circumstances, and we're relying now on pure political performance.
Chairman
in
Hunter,
2021, different circumstance, but we did do the amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is there a member of Congress currently serving in the 18th Congressional District at this present time?
No.
Okay, correct. Because of the death of our brother, our former colleague.
My classmate.
Your classmate, Congressman Sylvester Turner, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it your understanding that Governor Abbott called a special election for November to fill that seat, correct?
I don't know about
would you have any reason to disagree with me?
If you're a member of this House, what you state, I will rely on.
Okay, so hypothetically, if Congressman Turner had not passed away, he would still be the congressman for the 18th Congressional District, correct?
I think so.
Okay, and based on your new map and the parent and Congressman Al Green's address, he would now be in the new 18th Congressional District, correct?
According to what was said in the hearing.
According to his testimony, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so wouldn't you agree then that basically it would be a collision course with Congressman Al Green and the congressman of the 18th Congressional District?
Well, I don't know about collision courses, and both individuals I knew and know for a long time. But what I'm telling you, we have 5 new congressional.
How many new?
4 are Hispanic performing districts.
That's not the question. That's not the question.
You haven't let me finish.
You go ahead and finish.
And they are based on the U.S. Supreme Court political performing. And so I am adopting this map. I think this is the map we should do that I proposed.
No.
And it's the right thing.
And
it's been adopted by all law.
I understand your position, but you understand the way this process works. At the back, I get a chance to ask the questions, and you get a chance to answer them.
No, you need to let me answer.
I am letting you answer.
You're breaking up. I can't even talk.
Here,
why don't you finish?
Hypothetical. So here's the
Go ahead
question.
and finish.
Here's the question then. Based on this proposed map in House Bill 4, how many African American opportunity districts are there in Houston?
In the Houston area? On mine, or are you talking about?
On yours.
Which amendment are you?
I'm talking about.
I thought we were talking about the amendment.
On your.
So now you're going back to my bill. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and answer your questions, even though you're not staying on the amendment. First of all, CD 18 now becomes a 50.8% black CVAP. In 2021, you're advocating for a 38.8% CVAP. I think my map is much more improving. CD 30 is now a 50.2% black CVAP. In 2021, which you've been defending, it's only 46%. So you have two that are majority black CVAP districts in Texas.
As opposed to 4, correct?
I don't know where you're coming up with.
Well, currently we have 4. You have CD 9, CD 18, CD 30, and CD 33, and now you have 2 based on your map. You reduced it by 50%.
CD 9 becomes a majority Hispanic district.
Correct. I said
so
African
you
American.
oppose that.
No, I said African American.
Yes,
I said African American. I didn't say Hispanic. I said African American.
CD 9 is a new district.
Correct.
With political performance.
That is correct.
I've been saying
I'm not
this
arguing against that.
since
I'm
you
only
don't let
asking
me
the facts.
finish, Ron.
Go ahead.
You just said that I could talk, and you don't.
Members, please don't talk over each other. And Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
I would ask you to keep your questions about the amendment before us.
I will do that. Thank you, Chairman Hunter.
All right, thank you.
So, based on Representative Davis' amendment that you're arguing, you're opposing, her map restores the District 9 and District 18, District 30 and District 33. Isn't that correct?
Whatever she said, I
Okay.
don't know if it does.
Those are 4 African American seats that she's restoring in her proposed amendment that you're opposing, correct?
All I've told you, Ron, is she came up, said she filed a map, and that's what's happening. Do I know that? I don't know that.
And do you know, finally, my final question is, do you know that her map intends to restore the 30th Congressional District that was once held by Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson, that is now held by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett as an African-American district, along with Congressman Mark Vesey, our former colleague here on this House floor as well. It restores his 33rd Congressional District. Isn't that true, sir?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move to table. Can I go to the mic? I just say withdraw my motion to table.
Chair recognizes
Mr.
Chairman
Speaker, members, I'm withdrawing my motion to table.
Chair recognizes Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to withdraw the amendment.
The amendment has been withdrawn. Okay. Members, that was our last amendment. Anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against, please come down front.
The chair recognizes Mr. Wally in opposition to the bill. Members, please take your conversations outside the rail. Mr. Wally.
Members, I stand today in strong opposition of this legislation. As the representative for the voters of House District 140, who elected me to be their voice in this chamber, I must speak out against this injustice being done on the House floor today, particularly for Congressional District 29. Since I was elected to office 16 years ago, every single one of my constituents has lived in Congressional District 29. Members, even before I was elected, I worked for Congressman Gene Green in Congressional District 29 for several years. I worked in areas from Baytown to Pasadena to South Houston to the East End, all the way up to Northside and Aldine. I know this area of Congressional District 29 very well. Make no mistake, members, and to the public. House Bill 4, this map being rammed through the process today, obliterates that district. It treats our voters as crash test dummies. The district has been dismantled. The biggest impact to my voters will be on splitting apart communities of color that have historically been together. Congressional District 29 is a long-standing Latino majority district in Harris County. This district was created after the 1990 census as mandated by the Voting Rights Act, Section 2. The two anchors of this district are the North Side in my area and the East End in East Harris County. Historic Mexican-American and Hispanic neighborhoods in Houston, where many of our grandfathers, our abuelitos, abuelitas, our tíos and tías settled in the early parts of the 19th and 20th century. These areas are now being ripped apart. They're being ripped apart. Members, so communities like Melrose Park, Lindell Park, Northline, Jensen Drive on the north side, which have always been connected communities on the East End side, communities like Second Ward, Denver Harbor, Manchester, Magnolia Park, Pecan Park. Communities like Aldine, Green Ridge North, Imperial Valley, Green Forest, High Meadows, Little York on the north side also have historically been connected to areas like Galena Park, Jacinto City, Pasadena, and East Harris County along the channel. But look, members, what's comical about this, I doubt the author of the bill and the author of this map even know where these neighborhoods are. But they are clear communities of interest that have always voted together since the inception and the creation of this district, Congressional District 29. And you will hear from my colleagues, Representative Hernandez, Representative Marianne Perez. They know exactly the neighborhoods we're talking about. Currently, the Hispanic citizen voting age population of House District 29 is about 64%. Under this map, the facts are that the population in the current CD 29 drops down to 42%. It does this by sawing off the district down the middle with the hacksaw and splitting apart the entire east side of Harris County from District 29 and running that eastern part, inner city East End, and connecting it all the way out into Liberty County. I'm sure there's fine people in Liberty County. I'm sure the representative from Liberty County is proud to represent their community. But the facts are, East End, inner city Houston, I would suspect have very, not much in common with Liberty County. What's more, the map on the floor today has changed from the map proposed from the first special session. And it's gotten worse for the Harris County Latino voters. These changes happened without public testimony and without a public hearing. On behalf of my voters, members, I'm angry. It's easy. It's easy when staring at a map of Texas on your computer to look at spreadsheets with population data and voter turnout and use that to draw shapes that will help you win elections. But redistricting is about the people and communities and creating districts that comply with the principle of one person, one vote. We also have a legal obligation to carefully consider how those districts affect the ability of racial and ethnic groups of voters elect candidates of their choice. This is more complex than just checking your population percentages. You cannot split apart a bunch of brown and black Texans and pat yourself on the back because you left enough behind to try to avoid legal trouble. Texas voters deserve better than this. My constituents deserve better than this. This body, this institution deserve better than this. Please vote no on this sorry piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today, in this second call special session, the first order of business should have been House Bill 1. We should have been debating a bill to restore flood relief to many Texans who lost their lives in the Kerr County historic flooding. But instead, the first bill that we're taking up is a racial gerrymandered House Bill 4 from a mid-decade redistricting that is totally unnecessary. You know, I want to put this in context. Just less than 2 weeks ago, we commemorated and celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And everyone in this body should be extra proud of it because it was signed into law by then Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States of America from Texas, our own Texans. This, in the history books, is one of the most transformational pieces of legislation in our nation's history. It changed literally the course of this country. It righted a historic wrong. And what do I mean by that? Prior to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, people who looked like me, they couldn't serve in public office. In fact, I'm the first African American elected in Fort Bend County as state representative since Reconstruction. And I know I stand on the shoulders of those who made good trouble. What do I mean by that? The people who came before me, whose shoulders I stand on today, they risked their lives to end Jim Crow laws that had literacy tests, that had poll taxes, where people had to recite the Constitution. People had to guess how many bubbles in a bar of soap. Not just people, but African Americans in this country. Because of their risking their lives on freedom rides, because they're risking their lives sitting at lunch counters, because they marched, they protested, knowing they may be beaten with billy clubs, knowing that they may have water hydrants pushed on them, knowing that law enforcement was not there to serve and protect them, but to push them back and enforce Jim Crow. They defied the odds. They pressed forward. Many of them didn't make it back home. Many of them lost their lives because lynching was a way of life. Lynching was common. Prior to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, there was an incident that was captured on national TV called Bloody Sunday. And if you don't know it, you should Google it. Bloody Sunday was when former Congressman John Lewis and other freedom fighters, they marched from Selma to Montgomery for ending Jim Crow so that people could vote of color. Many of them were beaten, including Congressman John Lewis. He was beaten nearly to death by law enforcement because they weren't there to serve and protect. He was beaten to a pulp. He nearly lost his life. He was knocked unconscious. It captured the American people to say, not on our watch do we want to continue to allow this country to treat African Americans this way. And people of good conscience said that they didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. So they came in solidarity with John Lewis and Martin Luther King and others to say, we want to change this. And so it wasn't just African Americans then walking and marching. It was people of good conscience that were Anglo, that were other ethnicities, to say in America, we believe that every human being should be treated with dignity and have the right to vote. Long story short, that was why they passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, because of Bloody Sunday. And here we are in 2025, not 1965, with a racial gerrymandered map that takes us back to those dark days. And why do I say that? Because we have a map where we have the first African-American district that was created after the passage of the Voting Rights Act to elect our own Barbara Jordan, the first African-American to serve in Congress in the South since Reconstruction in the 18th Congressional District. That was progress. But here we are with a map that eliminates the progress that was made, the marginal progress that was made in a state that has more African Americans than any other state in the country. You had Barbara Jordan. After her, you had the legendary Mickey Leland. After that, you had the legendary Craig Washington. After that, you had the legendary Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, followed by Congressman Sylvester Turner and his death. It's already a shame that they didn't call the special election after Congressman Turner died in January to put that ballot on May. But here we are today where this map, this racial gerrymander, would now pit the winner of the 18th Congressional District with Congressman Al Green of the 9th Congressional District, because he is now under this proposed map in the 18th. Congressman Al Green has been a freedom fighter speaking truth to power. And now you're taking away a historic district and 2 African Americans, and you're making Houston pit 2-1. And then you go to Dallas. It doesn't stop there. The historic 30th Congressional District that was once held by Etta Bernice Johnson, who we memorialized, and her body lied in state. She was a transformational legislator from this body. She was preceded by Congressman Jabson Crockett, our own colleague, former colleague. Now that seat is Congresswoman Crockett was removed from her district into the 33rd to pit her against our former colleague, Congressman Mark Vesey. So we should be increasing African American representation by 50%, but unfortunately, this racial gerrymandered map reduces it by 50%. And I don't know, I feel like Fannie Lou Hamer when she said she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of seeing more attacks on African Americans in this state that has more African Americans than any other state. I'm sick and tired of seeing more attacks on our Hispanic brothers and sisters, because this map doesn't just disenfranchise African Americans, but also our Latino brothers and sisters. I'm sick and tired of this attacks on black and brown with this anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm sick and tired of us not want to talk about it because we implemented critical race theory, so we don't even teach about it anymore. So I feel the pain of our ancestors who thought they had overcome many of the barriers of the past. that we shouldn't have to relitigate these issues in 2025. Thank God we have the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and this House Bill 4 violates that. It's unconstitutional, and it more than likely will be struck down. But in the meantime, many people, including my constituents that are currently in the 9th Congressional District, are going to be disenfranchised. And so I know, as a man of faith, I believe that in a higher power, and I believe that Barbara Jordan would be turning over in her grave to see what we're doing in this body. I believe that Sheila Jackson Lee and Mayor Congressman Sylvester Turner will be turning over in their grave to see what we're doing in this body. And I know many of you probably are like, well, this is just something we have to do. People elect us to be statesmen, to put people before politics. And this racial gerrymander is going to disenfranchise and impact people, specifically people of color, packing and cracking communities of interest to disenfranchise them so they don't have the ability to elect a candidate of their choice. And so I rise today in opposition of this racial gerrymander map and ask you to be on the right side of history and reject this notion, this Texas takeover, and do what's best for the citizens of this state. Not President Trump, not anybody else, but the citizens of this state. They are the ones that are watching. And you may not realize this today, but just like the people that were on the wrong side of history back in 1965, history will be looking at the decisions that is made in this body today. And I want to challenge you, when you look in the mirror, where were you? Were you on the right side of history in favor of voting rights for all? Or were you on the wrong side of history where you're upholding discrimination with this racial gerrymander map? So I strongly urge you to do the right thing and protect the rights of the vulnerable that's found in Proverbs 31:8-9. And I'll close with this. It says to speak out for the one who cannot speak, for the rights of those who are doomed. Speak out, judge fairly, and defend the rights of oppressed and needy people.
Ms. Garcia of Dallas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, under the current map, CD 32 is a coalition district. When white, Black, Hispanic, and Asian communities come together and make up nearly 68% of the population, and nearly 64% of the voting age population. Black and Hispanic voters alone account for over 52% of the voting age population. Under the proposed map, our community will be torn apart. The Anglo share of the district rises from 36% to more than 52% of the voting age population. Meanwhile, Black, Hispanic voters together drop from 52% down to just 35% of the voting age population. This is not a minor adjustment. This is deliberate dismantling of minority voting strength in North Texas. In Dallas County, the effects are even more clear. Currently, Dallas makes up 85% of CD 32, within what share the district reflects the true diversity of the Dallas County, 31.7% Anglo and 58.9% Black and Hispanic combined. But in the new map, Dallas County's shares of the district is reduced to 62%, adding many counties far from Dallas, Rockwell, Hunt, Upshur, Wood, Rains. As a result, Anglo voters jumped to nearly 38% in Dallas's portion, and the combined Black and Hispanic population falls to 48%. In other words, the very heart of Dallas's diverse communities is being diluted by drawing counties that do not reflect the same racial or cultural makeup. This is about more than numbers on a page. It is about whether families in Pleasant Grove, Garland, and Mesquite will still have a voice. It is about whether communities of color that built CD 32 into a district of opportunity will be silenced by map lines that crack Dallas County apart and pack it with neighboring counties. I want to be clear. This map doesn't just weaken minority representation, it severs the connection between communities and their elected officials. It makes it harder for parents, workers, and seniors in Dallas County to know that their voices matter as much as anyone else's. Congressional District 32 has been a district opportunity. This proposed map would erase the progress and turn CD 32 into an Anglo-majority district, dismantling the coalition of Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters who have fought for fair representation. Members, our democracy is the strongest when every community has a seat at the table. Weakening minority voices in Dallas is not just unfair, but unconstitutional. I urge you to reject this map and stand up for fair representation in Texas.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise today in strong opposition to House Bill 4. This bill represents one of the most blatant assaults on fair representation that we have seen in Texas. Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and Harris County was one of the most diverse counties in America. That diversity is our greatest strength. It is what makes our neighborhoods vibrant, our workforce dynamic, and our communities resilient. And yet, HB 4 silences that diversity instead of celebrating it. Under this map, Latino communities in Harris County have been split apart and scattered across multiple districts, silencing their voice and diluting their ability to elect their candidate of choice. Nowhere is this clearer than in Congressional District 29. For decades, CD 29 has stood as a performing Latino majority district, a community of interest where Hispanic voters could elect their candidate of choice. But this map dismantles that district. Latino neighborhoods like Denver Harbor, Magnolia Park, 2nd Ward, Manchester, and Northside, historic centers of Latino political strength, have been carved out. The Hispanic citizen voting age population has been reduced almost 20 points, from roughly 63% to just 43%. That kind of drastic change has nothing to do with population shifts or routine adjustments. It is a clear effort to weaken Latino influence in Harris County. Under this proposed map, my home and almost my entire legislative district, which is over 70% Hispanic, is taken out of CD 29 and placed in CD 9. HB redraws CD 9 in a way that claims to create a Latino majority district on paper, 50.15%, but in reality dilutes the voting power of communities of interest in inner city Houston. By stretching the district across unrelated suburban and even rural areas, this map undermines Latino representation. It makes little sense to connect inner city Houston all the way to Liberty County, 50 miles away. These areas do not share the same priorities, challenges, or way of life. Inner city Houston is one of the most diverse, dense urban centers in America. Demographically, the contrast is stark. Houston's East End is majority Latino, home to historic Hispanic neighborhoods with large immigrant communities and several Catholic churches over 100 years old that were established for the growing Mexican-American community. Combining Houston's historic Hispanic neighborhoods like Denver Harbor, 2nd Ward, Magnolia Park, and the cities of Galena Park and Jacinto City, which are less than a mile apart, with Liberty County, a white county 50 miles away, denies Latino voters a meaningful chance to elect their candidate of choice. This is not what a functioning democracy looks like. This is not what Texans expect of us. We should be expanding opportunities for representation, not dismantling them. Harris County's Latino population growth is so significant that the county should have gained a second Latino opportunity district. Instead, this map cracks Latino voters apart, dismantles CD 29, and distorts CD 9. all to weaken the communities of color that are the backbone of our economy and our democracy. Members, HB 4 is not about fair representation. It is about silencing voices, silencing the voices of Latino voters, my family, my friends, my neighbors. It is about stripping away opportunity districts that were hard-won and protected under the Voting Rights Act. This is not only wrong, it is unconstitutional. I urge you to reject HB 4. Protect the rights of every Texan to have their voice heard. Protect the communities who built Harris County and keep it strong. And protect the integrity of our democracy, which demands fair maps and equal representation for all. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I have lived in CD 29 all the days of my life, and with the passage of this map, it will move me to CD 9. With these redistricted maps, voter disenfranchisement will undoubtedly be worse in many communities like mine. Based on data from the 2020 census, Latino voters make up about 43.4% of the people in Harris County, Texas. The Hispanic population has been the largest ethnic group in Harris County since 2010. In fact, in Houston, over 38% of Houstonians aged 5 years and older speak Spanish at home. This is the case for many of my constituents. My community deserves fair representation. Representatives who share their values, understand their culture, and are able to communicate in their first language. Representatives who truly understand the struggles that Hispanic communities face. The Hispanic population is already underrepresented. These maps further affect our representation. Additionally, based on 2020 census data, Black or African American residents make up 18.7% of the total population of Harris County. Those two groups, when combined, make up the clear majority. Despite making up the clear majority in Houston, where I live, and in this state, our voters' voices are diluted. Our communities certainly deserve to have their voices heard. I urge you to join me in voting no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Ms. Gervin Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members and people in the gallery. Today represents something new and different as it relates to, as state representatives, how we must see ourselves moving forward. I would ask each member in this body to understand this. When I ran for election, I ran to be able to help improve Texas. And I know some people think this may be a game, and it's funny. But the reality is this: Texas needs brave men and women. Texas needs transparency, which means engaging the community. Texas needs its members to respect and show how honored they should be to be a part of this body. What was interesting to me as I had my dialogue with Chairman Hunter was he focused a lot on why Democrats left to not create a quorum. I want to be clear. I want each and every one of you to understand, we didn't run from anything. We ran to the public because what we felt has truly been an injustice and is being an injustice. And I'll tell you why it was an injustice. We didn't act as Texans to be able to change the dynamics of our community. There was a letter that came through. A letter. Mr. Speaker, I hope in the future that we're not moved by outside influence. That we indeed move in a way that makes sure that Texans sets the agenda and no one else. When I think about these maps, and I have asked on a number of occasions, who drew these maps? No one can tell, or at least they have not revealed who drew these maps. And I know that's a bald-faced lie. So when one comes from the outside to steal what's precious in Texas, that's hurtful. I asked again, where are our brave Texans? But I would caution each and every one of you, be careful. Be careful about the actions you're taking, because indeed it not only impacts us, but it impacts our children and our children's children, the things that we do today. If DC has asked for something, we must ask ourselves, what's next? What's next of interference? For me, this body has changed. It has created an atmosphere of division, an atmosphere of disgust, an atmosphere when I now look at my colleagues and say, wow, who are you really? You know, when I had my medical episode, I was so moved by the members who came to pray and gave me well wishes. And as you know, each and every day we come, we pray together. We pray together. We give honor to the U.S. flag and the Texas flag because we know the value of what we do here. But when that changes, not because we disagree, not because we have different positions, that changes when I see professionals that will support something that they know is wrong, but because they want to either hold on to a seat or they're fearful of the unknown. I would say to my colleagues, what's so hurtful is when my colleagues can look me in the face and look other members in the face and be willing to take away 2 African American seats. As you all know, the struggle, particularly for African Americans, have been long and hard. When we looked at a situation where the floods came, so many people died, some of which I even knew. And we put this as a priority before putting that first. That tells us all something about this body. Mr. Speaker, we need to change that. We need to be able to address those priorities first. It should have been number 1 on the agenda, but it wasn't, and that was disheartening. So I say to my colleagues today, get brave. Understand our real work here. It's not a game. It's not a plaything. We've been blessed to be one of 150, to be able to improve the quality of life for all Texans. And we have to come together and understand what that looks like so we create the win-win, not the winners and losers. That's the Texas I would love to be a part of. It was also hurtful with the social media. It was really childish more than anything. Lock them up, go get them, they running, all that kind of nonsense. And I think we're too important and we've got a job that's too big to go down that rabbit hole. So for today, I have mixed feelings about this body. And I hope that we can become a better body, not one that seeks to hurt others, to create cultural wars, to demean different positions, but indeed that we can work together to respect the positions that we hold. I call upon each and every one of you to really seek inside why you are really here and what your real role and goal should be as a legislator. Members of my Republican Party, we need you to be brave. We need you to be transparent. We need you as a working partner, not as an adversary. Members of the Democratic Party, let's continue. Even though we're in the minority, we're going to continue to fight the battle for the people. And finally, I would say this. Those of you who feel this is okay, let's get ready for the fight. Because the fight ain't over. It's going to continue. And it's going to be one where we have energized America to save democracy. And we will continue to do that as we move forward. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ms. Gervin Hawkins, Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, thank you for being brave. I apologize that so many of your colleagues chose to speak over your speech. Mr. Speaker and members, I rise today not just as a legislator, but as a Texan who still believes in the radical idea that voters should choose their leaders, not the other way around. This bill, House Bill 4, betrays that idea. House Bill 4 is not about representation. It is not about fairness. It is a desperate, mid-decade power grab engineered in Washington, executed in Austin, and paid for by the Texans we are supposed to represent. Let me be clear. This is Donald Trump's map. It is clearly and deliberately manufactures 5 more Republican seats in Congress because Trump himself knows the voters are rejecting his agenda. And instead of respecting that rejection, he's changing the rules. Instead of listening to the people, he's trying to silence them. And Texas Republicans have been more than willing to help. So let's talk about what House Bill 4 really does. It punishes my community of Austin, one of the most diverse, fastest growing, and engaged cities in America, by carving it up and pitting 2 progressive champions, Congressman Doggett and Kassar, into the same district. It dilutes the voting power of Black, Latino, and AAPI Texans, communities that have fueled our state's growth and are entitled to a voice in its future. And it draws neighborhoods like mine in North Austin into districts that stretch over 360 miles to Midland and Odessa in one direction, and over 170 miles to Freestone County in the other direction. Chairman Hunter, that's over 500 miles apart. That's not compact, that's corrupt. It is shameful, it is dangerous, and it sets a precedent that should terrify every single American. If you want to know the state of our democracy, look no further than this House floor. Representative Nicole Collier has been held here against her will for 2 full days, over 48 hours, because she refused to sign a permission slip from DPS, treating her like she's a child asking to use the restroom. Representative Collier is a 7-term legislator, an attorney, and an advocate for her community. She's being surveyed and detained in her own capital simply for dissenting. This is not democracy. This is authoritarianism in real time. Republicans are going to try and convince you that this is the will of the people. But if the people agreed with them, why do they need to cheat to win? Why did they try to ram this through without any public testimony on this map? Why did they hold a duly elected representative prisoner? Why did they use flood victims as a political bargaining chip? I'll tell you why. Because they're scared. They're not scared of me. They're not scared of our caucus, but they are scared of the people. They're scared because they know the people are tired of their lies. They're scared because they know the people are rejecting their policies. And they are desperate to pass these maps because it's their last chance to cling to power, and they know if they don't, they will lose in the 2026 midterms. So let me end where I began. I still believe in the Republic. I still believe in this House. I still believe that democracy is worth fighting for. That's why I broke quorum. That's why I stand here today. And that's why I will vote no on this racist bill. Because House Bill 4 is not just about where the lines are drawn, it's about whether the people still hold the pen. And I think they should. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Mr. Emanuel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I wanted to read a definition because I realize that some people have gotten a little lost with what we're doing here and what's happening. I want to explain what is an economic engine. It refers to key drivers of economic growth, profitability, and value creation for companies, regions, or nations. When we were in committee, I brought up the fact that we were taking economic engines from already poor minority districts or districts that had been underrepresented or poor and underrepresented for many years. The point of that being is that we are taking from districts, for instance, Congressional District 30, which is where Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Jackson was. She used to be in the House. Now let me explain to some of you who don't know anything about her. She was a woman who used to have to sometimes walk home from work because they would force her to be late so she would miss the bus. So she'd have to walk 5 miles, and then the next morning they would say, "Hey, Eddie, did you catch the bus?" And she would say, "Yes, I did." And they would laugh knowing that she had to walk 5 miles to get home in the afternoon. These economic engines give us the ability to call these companies and make sure that they're investing in their areas. It's not forcing them to, it's asking them to. But I want to give you an example that a lot of people in here don't have. I'm going to give you my congressional district, which a lot of times people want to say things like, oh, Democrat-run cities don't work well. Well, the reason that my Democratic city hasn't worked as efficiently as it should have for over 2 decades is because in 2003, when this body did a mid-decade redistricting, you cut off our economic engines. You gave us to a different part of a county, Brazoria County, that has nothing in common with Southeast Texas of Jefferson County. And it has diluted that power, and it broke us up. It put us with a group of people who had more retail when we are more blue collar and we're industry. So we are split between Orange County, we're split between Jasper County that is further away from us, but we're closer off when it looks to representation to Brazoria County, which is much richer and much wider. And our districts were actually very well minority. It was blacks, Hispanics, whites. It was a true coalition district of just people working together. And by the way, it was already considered a Republican district. But you cut off our economic engines. And so now we have 2 of my cities are considered 2 of the most poorest cities in the country out of 20. But it gives you all a reason to say that certain people are poor, certain people are damaged. We need to take over their school districts. But that was done in this body when you took away our representation, when you gave us to a congressional member who didn't have a real understanding of what we were dealing with, and when the vast majority of those counties, the other part of that county, they didn't have to come to us to ask for votes, whether they were a Democrat or Republican. What you're doing right now to poor and underrepresented counties and cities is harmful. And I get winning, because we keep saying that this is about elections. But at what cost is winning everything? Is it more important for you to win and have seats knowing that you've already messed up and harmed other people in their districts? You have already helped increase crime rates in other people's districts. You've already had them underfunded when it comes to school programs. And I'm telling you this not because someone read this to me in a book. I'm telling you this because this is what you've done to my community. This gives you a reason to have people that will go out there and say racist things about Black and Latino and Hispanic people because you've created an environment that has festered with people who are living in poverty. I ask you to please vote no on this, not about politics, but about the fact that you are going to cause real harm to people, and you are going to cause harm to your own citizens by breaking up communities of interest. You are going to put people's lives at risk. And for all of you who live out in East Texas, I want you to remember this. If you live in Jasper and you're trying to get to the nearest hospital, or you live in Orange County, you're much more likely to die giving childbirth because a hospital is 40 or more miles away. And those are mainly a lot of the constituents that you all say you're creating districts for, but you've made their districts even poorer. This is what you're going to be doing to other people throughout this entire state. And it is devastating what you are doing to poor minority communities, but it's more devastating at the fact that sometimes you can hate someone so much that you will do irreparable damage to yourself. That is what you are opening yourselves up to, is that one day when the demographics shift, you will be in districts that you will not have any voting power, and it will hurt. And you will watch your children grow up and go to jail and lose educational value. And I know that because that's what you all did to my district. That's what I represent. That's who I am and where I am from. I hope you take that into accountability when you're taking your vote into play, because this has real life implications for people, and it does hurt.
Chair recognizes Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm concerned that when I speak to the members of this body, I notice that many of you are not listening, and I actually don't expect you to. And I don't expect my words to affect how you act in the next few minutes. That's why today I'd like to speak to the people of Texas and the people of this country. And I want to speak out against the process that has been used to ram this gerrymandered piece of work down the throats of the people of our state. So, I'm a process person. I'm an engineer for a living. I'm particularly keen on how we do what we do. So let me start out by pointing out that the whole process for this has been a sham from the beginning. Any member in here, any leader of this state that tries to tell you that there were public hearings on this map, that is simply a lie. That is not true. So first, what we have before us today is a committee substitute that was voted out in a formal hearing. What that means for the layman at home is a formal meeting is not a hearing to the public. And when the author of the bill gets up at this microphone and says, we're not required to hold hearings, they did not hold hearings on this bill. They did not hold hearings on this map. So first, I'm honored to be the vice chair of the Redistricting Committee. I've had a front row seat to all of this. That committee did not convene during the session. It wasn't important. There was nothing to consider. Now in the special session, suddenly it's become an urgent enough need that we have some hurried hearings around the state with no bill being presented to the public. So let me just tell you what a farce that is. We had a hearing here in Austin. We had a hearing in Arlington. We had a hearing in Houston. Those 3 hearings, only 5 hours each. No map had been presented. We asked the bill author and the committee chairman over and over again, do you have a map? Are you working with anybody on a map? Is there a map? And they told us, no. We haven't been talking to anybody. We don't know anything about no map. Still, the people of Texas overwhelmingly came out to complain about this process, this mid-decade redistricting process that they could only see as unfair because it's not based on new census data. It's only based on partisan performance. Between the 3 public hearings to solicit public input, we had over 3,000 people in this state weigh in. Let me be clear, 98.8%, almost 99% of the people that weighed in, whether there was a map in front of us or not, boldly decried this. The people of Texas spoke, and the leaders of Texas ignored them. 99% opposed, 3,000 comments. The worst part is that this map seeks to serve power bosses in Washington by dismantling communities of color. And when we put it that way, I know I have heard members in this body push back on that. What it does is it dilutes the voting power of communities of color by dismantling those districts. And just saying a recent court case allows us to doesn't make it fair. And just saying there's no law against redistricting in the middle of the decade doesn't make it right. Y'all, if you're losing a game so badly that you feel the need to change the referees and change the rules to help you win, maybe it's time to have a look in the mirror. Because this process has been a sham from beginning to end. The maps that we're voting on today were never reviewed by the people of Texas. It dismantles communities of color to serve power bosses in Washington, and that is that. So when it comes time to express your opinion at the ballot box, and I'm talking to you, the people of Texas, I hope you'll show up and show out and let these folks know that we deserve fairness, equity, and a voice in our process. The bottom line is the people should choose the representatives to be their voice, and we should not have power bosses in Washington deciding who gets to vote where so that they can install Congress members. Thanks for your attention.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Weiner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Mr. Speaker, could we get some order? There's a lot of chatter.
Members, please take your conversations outside the rail.
Members, I have never much liked the idea of legislators drawing politicians' districts. And that was a feeling that was affirmed by my first experience being in this body, helping draw districts. But one of the positives was being able to advocate for my constituents, and in particular, to be able to advocate for the I-35 corridor in Hays County to stay whole, to be connected in its state house districts, its state senate districts, and its congressional district. That's important because the I-35 corridor is a distinct community that is connected to itself. People in East Austin have family in Kyle and San Marcos. And those folks have family down in San Antonio. Now, I know there's been a lot of conversation about how wonderfully compact these new maps are. But the truth is, this new map is ripping apart a performing Hispanic opportunity district, Congressional District 35, that runs up and down the I-35 corridor. It's going to take communities like Blanco Gardens and Victory Gardens, historic Hispanic communities in San Marcos, and fold them into a district that is over 60% white. It's going to take the voice of those constituents and effectively erase them, giving them no power in determining who represents them in Congress, and attaching them to counties that they have little relationship with, like Bandera, Gillespie, Kendall, Kerr. Rural counties that don't have much in common with the rapidly growing and urbanizing I-35 corridor. It's also going to take fast-growing communities like Buda and Kyle and attach them to communities on the Gulf Coast, to Matagorda County, Aransas County, Nueces. It's going to take bedroom communities of Austin like Buda and Kyle, communities where the industries are focused on tech, government, higher education, and connect them to more industrial communities that just don't share their interests. But most importantly, these maps are ripping apart Hispanic communities, and the lines don't even make sense. Travis Elementary School, part of San Marcos CISD, will be in Congressional District 27, just barely. But much of its attendance zone will be in Congressional District 21, and a little finger that stretches up between Post Road and the Blanco River. Why anyone thought that was a boundary that would make sense to the constituents of San Marcos, Texas is beyond me, but the line is confusing and arbitrary and divides up communities. It means that Blanco Gardens will be in a different congressional district than Blanco River Gardens. Neighborhoods that, again, share a community, share relationships, share a grocery store, will be in different congressional districts. And members, this is particularly important because Congressional District 35 has been a performing Hispanic opportunity district. We hear a lot of promises about this new map, but you don't know performance till the map is drawn on the ground, until elections actually happen. Congressional District 35 was court-ordered to be drawn as a Hispanic opportunity district based in the I-35 corridor. And this body is about to disregard that court order and rip communities I represent apart. Remember, these maps also harm the Black community along the I-35 corridor, not just the Hispanic community. Right now, Congressional District 35 is 13.9% Black in voting age population. Now, parts of that district are going to get absorbed into Congressional District 37, Congressional District 21, and some will stay in 35. The highest Black population in any of those districts is 10%. Congressional District 21 will be just 2.53%. That means our historic Black communities in San Marcos that live along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard are going to have no ability to link their voices with those of other constituents who share their identity and their history in order to have an influence on the electoral outcome. This map is destroying a district that has consistently been able to elevate the voices of people of color in choosing who represents them. So members, I ask you to think about the harm that's happening. Think about the districts on the ground that are being ripped apart. Think about the constituents who are going to have members of Congress who have no reason to listen to them because these maps are drawn to marginalize their voices. Members, stand up for fair representation and vote no on this map.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Flores, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for question?
Will the lady yield for questions?
I will.
The lady yields.
Thank you, Representative Sweiner. I understand your district, like mine, is within the current Congressional District 35. Is that correct?
Yes, about 70% of my district is in Congressional District 35.
And this is a strong Latino community and a strong Latino opportunity district, is it not?
Yeah, we have historic Hispanic communities all up and down the I-35 corridor, from Ulen to Kyle to San Marcos to East Austin, and of course down to San Antonio. And these are communities that, as I mentioned, share relationships. I was on the phone with my old chief of staff recently, who's old guard San Marcos, and he has cousins in East Austin and cousins in San Antonio.
Are you familiar with Del Valley in my District 51 in southeast Travis County?
I'm familiar with the community, but I don't know it as well as you do.
Well, as you might be aware, I represent 2 school districts. Del Valley ISD is in the community of Del Valley, and that's just east of the airport. That I'm being told by constituents, and our Senator Saffirini, is being called by constituents with concern that their school district is being split between 2 congressional districts. Their own school district is now going to be split between 2 different congressional districts. Are you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of the specifics of Del Valley, but we're seeing those same concerns. San Marcos CISD is going to be split between 2 different districts, and even the attendance zones for some elementary schools are going to be divided between 2 districts. It doesn't make a lick of sense.
And that community is a big Hispanic community, and those students in that school district are going to be torn apart. It's a community of interest, and they're going to be, no longer be able to share a congressional representative. Don't you find that really troubling?
I find it incredibly troubling. And I was looking over the map, using some of the tools we have to look at the population, the Hispanic population in particular in that area. And when you're east of 35, I-35 in either Travis County or Hays County, there is almost always, with a couple exceptions, a Hispanic plurality. And in most cases, a Hispanic majority. Those constituents should have the right to band together and elect the candidate of their choice, just like they can in the current Congressional District 35.
Well, thank you, Representative Sweener, for standing up for your constituents, for standing up for my constituents that are within that congressional district. And I also join you in urging everybody to vote no against this map. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Flores. Members, the facts are clear. This map is going to rip apart performing minority opportunity districts. And the harm in my community it's going to be immense. So I urge you to vote no and keep these connected communities of interest along I-35 together in Congressional District 35. Please vote no.
Chair recognizes Ms. Garcia Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise today in strong opposition to House Bill 4. This proposal disenfranchises millions of Texans, families, communities, and neighborhoods across our state, including those I represent in House District 115, and even myself. Under this plan, congressional districts 32 and 33 are radically redrawn to deprive Texans of fair representation. District 32, my own district, is an egregious example in North Texas. It forces together suburban communities like Farmers Branch, where I live, with rural communities as far as Pittsburgh and Gilmer in East Texas. These districts are neither compact nor true communities of interest. Instead, District 32 has been carved into a 175-mile fajita strip that dilutes and disenfranchises voters. District 33 is yet another case. Today, it connects Latino communities in Dallas and Fort Worth, ensuring their voices are heard. But under this new map, it is configured to Dallas County alone. That deliberate change strips representation not only from my constituents in House District 115, but also from the people of Tarrant County. The result? Over 1 million Latinos in North Texas are left without meaningful congressional representation. Their voices are silenced. This is targeted exclusion, plain and simple, driven not by the needs of Texans, but by out-of-state political interests. It is a sad day for this chamber and for Texas when we put the whims of DC bosses above the needs of Texans who are truly suffering right now, like our families in the Hill Country, still grieving their losses and struggling to rebuild their lives, and promised by our own leadership to be put first as HB1. I was so moved by history growing up, learning about the Underground Railroad, Nazi Germany, and so many other painfully immoral times our world has experienced. Asking myself if I would have just stood by, too scared to say anything. or if I would have met the moment in recognizing that our lives, each and every one of us, 150 members, our lives, our impact can turn the tide, stop the hurt, and heal others as well as ourselves at the same time. Today, I traded my state pin for my grandmother's pin in a reminder of how I was raised. I'm sure how so many of you were as well, to recognize our obligation to speak and fight for those who are most vulnerable, to speak up against injustice, and to have courage whenever everyone around you seems to be too scared to do what is right. Members, I implore you, my colleagues, I implore you to have courage. What we are doing today is unjust, it is un-Texan, and it is un-American. All eyes are on Texas. All eyes are on our chamber. For all of these reasons, I urge you to vote nay on House Bill 4. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, choices are at the heart of what we do. We choose what bills that we file, choose how we vote on legislation, choose what committees we want to be on. Today is a choice. We do not have to be doing this. And this is a critical moment in our history, just like my colleague just said. Recently, I went to a classroom in my district, and as an educator, going to a classroom is one of the most joyful experiences that I do as a legislator. And while I was having uplifting conversations, a part of my heart broke, because through the dialogue, I realized just how many young people are disenchanted with politics and elected officials, have very real concerns about the future of democracy, our state, and our country, are worried about the needs of their families and friends. This is what we should be focused on: their needs, their future, the leadership that they are pleading for. What they need to see is leadership that, like Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins said, was brave and demonstrated the utmost political courage, or leadership that has intentional and reflective choices. Leadership that is based in love, that creates policies that is compassionate and caring so that people can thrive. Leadership that is future building. Today, we are seeing none of that. Let me be very clear. We could be the leaders the next generation needs, but instead we are doing harmful legislation that is completely opposite of the needs of the next generation. We could be a body that comes together and demonstrates political courage, intentional choices, love, future building, by saying that we will not let our maps be rigged, by saying that the maps are the blueprint for democratic engagement and they should not be corrupted. We could be that body. There are choices being made that are not leading towards that energy. Members, I know that it's been a long day, but this is for our future, for our children. I urge you to vote no.
Chair recognizes Dr. Lalani.
Mr. Speaker, members, I stand here today not just as a legislator, but as a physician and as an immigrant who came to this country more than 30 years ago. Believing in the American dream, I built life in Sugar Land, caring for seniors and families. I ran for the office for the same reason I practice medicine, to diagnose what is wrong and act so the people can heal and thrive. I will not make this about the parties and personalities. I will talk about people. In this country, the people should choose their leaders, not the leaders should choose the people. I represent House District 76, one of the most diverse, vibrant, fast-growing areas in Texas, a living snapshot of America's future. Colleagues, the map before us, its consequences will far most upon the communities of color whose growth has powered the state, yet who often see their collective voices diluted by the lines drawn far from their block. Those choices are not accidental. Members, if the authors believe these maps improve representation for the communities of color, say so plainly. Put the racial impact on record. Tell the Texans the neighborhood splits and why. If you are proud of this impact, defend it here on the floor. Our constituents deserve no less. As a doctor, I would never ignore patients' warning signs. The warning signs are all over this map. It will determine who gets the clinic, who gets the flood control, the school investment, safe streets, and who will be told again to wait in the line. Briefly to the moment where we are in, the families across Texas are still rebuilding from disaster. They are asking why this is the first priority, why these maps are being fast-tracked, while their recovery and safety are pushed to the back. You know this is not right. The people you serve also know that. On the process, the map shaped behind closed doors, influenced by interest far from the communities on those pages, will not earn public trust. Trust is built upon open, with facts, and with the willingness to hear those who are affected the most, especially the community of color, who have carried so much of Texas growth and deserve a seat on the table, not the line through their neighborhood. Members, this vote will not close the book. The story of Texas is bigger than this map. In this story that brought me here, the American dream, and that every child, every senior, and every working family has a voice and have the choice who would represent them. We honor that promise when our district reflects the communities as they actually live, pray, learn, and work together. I ask you all to vote no on HB 4 to keep the faith with the people who have sent us here. Remember, Texans of every color and creed deserve a fair representation. I respectfully ask to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cracking and packing. Cracking and packing. It's the classic Texas Republican two-step when it comes to discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and other minority Texans. You crack and pack minority neighborhoods to dilute their voices and give outsized influence to Anglo communities, even though you know full well that Texans of color accounted for 95% of our state's population growth in the last decade. Your cracking and packing two-step is evident in many parts of the state in this map. I'm going to focus now just on my home county of Tarrant County. Tarrant County is a majority minority county of more than 2 million people. Tarrant County saw extensive growth in the last decade. All, I repeat, all because of people of color. In fact, Tarrant County's white population decreased in the last decade. But you wouldn't know that in looking at this discriminatory map. As you've already heard, this map fails to create a new Latino opportunity district in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, which is a tremendous failure because there should be one. But not only do we have that failure, this map cracks heavily Black and Hispanic neighborhoods in Fort Worth out of Congressional District 33, the district they have been united in since 2012. So let me talk about how you've accomplished the cracking. Some of those neighborhoods are submerged into CD 25, which sprawls out more than 100 miles nearly to Abilene. Rural Anglo voters will now control the outcome of their congressional election, canceling their voices. The rest of those CD 33 precincts are splintered and used for parts in CD 12, once again controlled by Anglo voters in West, Fort Worth, and Parker counties. By the way, let me remind the House, if you've forgotten, how CD 33 came to be. In 2011, the legislature, in passing its congressional map that year, did the exact same thing that this map does. They took heavily minority neighborhoods in Tarrant County and submerged them into white-controlled districts, suburban and rural districts, until a federal court stepped in and called it what it was: intentional racial discrimination that is against the law. Now, if you've heard this before, and if you're on the House Redistricting Committee like I am, it's because Congressman Vesey explained this to you a couple of weeks ago in our hearing, but you ignored it. Now, this legislature is poised to defy that court ruling from 2011 and repeat the same discriminatory sin. So that's the cracking, or an example of it. Let's talk about the packing. So most of my majority-minority House District 101 will be packed into CD 30, a historic Dallas-based district where black voters have elected the candidate of their choice since that district's creation in 1991. In other words, you don't need to pack more minority voters into that district unless, of course, your goal is to cynically dilute their collective voting strength. But the intentional discrimination doesn't even stop there. As Congresswoman Crockett testified in the House committee hearing a few weeks ago, you've removed key economic engines from CD 30, like Love Field in downtown Dallas. Hell, you even took her home out of her district. She told you that, but you ignored her on that too, just like you ignored the thousands of Texans who voiced their strong opposition to this corrupt process. But you say, and I heard this in the committee, surely Congressional District 30 is going to have new economic engines with all that new territory in Tarrant County. Wrong. CD 30 in Tarrant County goes right up to the campus of UT Arlington, but the university goes into CD 6. CD 30 goes right up to the General Motors plant, but not quite. It also goes into CD 6. And the Arlington Entertainment District in CD 25. You know that's not a coincidence. You know what it is. It's straight up intentional discrimination. You can falsely claim it's about partisanship, but you know that's just a smokescreen for racial discrimination. We all see it. The people of Texas see it. And now the American people see it. Texas redistricting maps have been found to violate the Voting Rights Act every decade since the 1970s. I don't know why this legislature is so hell-bent on keeping that shameful streak going. But know this, we will see you back in court very soon.
Chair recognizes Mr. Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my 6th term, and when you've been here long enough, you get to know people. We often get to talk more personally, sometimes behind committee rooms or when it's late night during budget night, and those conversations are usually a little bit more personal. We talk in ways to each other that we don't talk here, and so I thought that the approach I would take, with so much has already been said that I agree with, that I would talk to you now the way I would talk to you then, with maybe a few fewer cuss words, of course. But I have to tell you, as your colleague, as your peer, it's frustrating when it seems like no matter what we say or what I say, you always seem to know better. That is frustrating. It is demeaning. And I'll give you an example of how often that's happened since I've been here. Some of you who have been here as long as I have may remember SB 4, which was the Show Me Your Papers bill, which allowed law enforcement to essentially racially profile people and say, you look like you don't belong, show me your papers, show me that you belong here. And we tried to tell you that that singled us out. We tried to tell you what that would look like on the ground, but you knew better. And then you've got the DEI bans that focus on clubs and departments that are designed to help and guarantee the success of students of color in particular. And we tried to tell you how that felt, what it meant, what you were doing, and even then, you seemed to know better. And then we go to the library book bans, when so many of those books were written by authors of color. And we tried to tell you, look at who the authors are. Look what they're writing about. This is how it makes us feel. This is what you're doing. This is the effect. And even then, you seem to know better. Then we've got the 287G agreements, which turn local law enforcement into ICE agents. And look what's happening now. Our neighbors, our friends, our family are getting scooped off the street by masked, unidentified agents. And we tried to tell you, look what's going to happen. We are singled out. Look at how it makes us feel, and look at how it affects us. And even then, you seem to know better. And then, you didn't want Asian folks to own property. Very straightforward. And we said, you guys, look at what you're doing. Look at who you're pointing out. Look at how it makes people feel. And look at what's going to happen. And yet, even then, you seem to know better. When you tried successfully to have Confederate Heroes Day land around the same time as MLK Day, we tried to point out what it would do, how it would make people feel, what it would mean. We told you how it made us feel and who it singled out and who it would affect, and even then, you knew better. And so here we are with these maps. Tremendous population growth in Texas, especially in the black and brown communities. And the maps don't reflect that at all. And we're trying to tell you that there's something wrong there, that it's almost impossible to do that without focusing on race. And yet, you say that you know better. And now these maps are going through cities, counties, parts of town, and even neighborhoods, and drawing them away from one another, linking them up with people and places they have nothing to do with. And we are telling you, if you knew these places, if you know those people, you are singling them out, you are using race. Look at what you're doing. Look at how it makes them feel. And look at what the effect is. And even today, you are telling us that you know better. And I have to tell you, one of the distinguishing factors that someone is doing something to hurt you, that someone is doing something to keep you back and to hold you back, in the most insidious and cynical way, is when they say they know better. And that's what's happening today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise because I've heard from the proponents of this bill, from the authors of this bill,
that this is somehow about fixing census numbers, somehow exclusively about partisanship. It's about fixing unconstitutional maps. But with every pretextual explanation, oftentimes contradictory explanations, I come back to a simple premise. And I'm going to speak as the former chair of the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus, the oldest and largest Latino legislative caucus in America, and just point out that the Latino community, by any metric, by any standard that you can apply to any map, is already underrepresented in the state of Texas today. It would be hard by any measure to quarrel with that. Very, very difficult. We represent over 40% of the population of the state, was responsible for 50% of all the growth in this state, and yet you have to try really, really hard in this map to set our community back because we're already underrepresented. You have to be intentional in the face of all the growth and all the numbers and all the data. You must be intentional. You have to try really, really hard to have us enjoy less representation than we already do under this map. If you apply the numbers, this map furnishes maybe 4 or 5 districts where the Latino community can elect candidates of their choice. Okay? If you apply math to that and a percentage, that 4 or 5 out of 38 comes out to about 10.5% to about 13%. Again, even though we represented 50% of all the growth in this state and are now the largest plurality population in the state of Texas. So to only say that Latinos are going to get between 10 and 13% of the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice under this current map explains to me that you had to try really, really hard. You had to be intentional about this lack of representation. And we can go through the individual places. In Tarrant County, it's been discussed, where nearly 1 in 3 people is Latino, and yet this map dismantles their only chance at representation. Gone. In Dallas County, where over 1 million Latinos, and side note, more Latinos in North Texas than even South Texas, where we have waited for more than a decade to have the opportunity to elect a Dallas County neighbor of our choice, this map denies us again. In Houston, Representatives Wale, Perez, and Hernandez talked about the longstanding Latino neighborhoods that are systematically and intentionally packed and cracked, tying working class families to faraway suburbs that share nothing in common. In San Antonio, representatives have told you that a performing 60+% Latino congressional seat just disappears. It's gone. Poof. With no explanation. So this map is not democratic. It is not representative. Instead, let's just call it what it is. It is a deliberate, intentional, racial gerrymander. And the numbers don't lie. And colleagues, as has been pointed out to you over and over and over again, so much so that it must be seared into your brain, what is being attempted today is not new. What is being done to our communities today is not new, because every decade since the 1970s, this legislature, whether it was Dixiecrats or Democrats or Republicans,
has discriminated against people of color every decade. And when we think about those people who came before us, we wonder, wow, what were they like? What were those people like who could look at the African American, Asian, Latino people on this House floor and say, you deserve less representation. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, you deserve less representation. And I'm going to be intentional about that. What were those people like? So just ask yourselves, and ask yourselves if you want to add your name to that list of people who looked at these communities of color, at their colleagues in the eye and said, no, you deserve less representation. Y para el pueblo que esté aquí o que está mirando en la televisión, voy a ofrecer unos comentarios en español para que todo el mundo sea incluido en este debate. Porque es claro y sabemos que la única manera que nuestra comunidad hispana va a llegar de donde estamos, bajo representados, a dónde queremos ir, es con representación. Es con representación. And if representation wasn't so important, why are people willing to break the law and discriminate intentionally to take your representation from you? So, members, when Representative Bernal said that oftentimes this majority tells us, well, we know better than you, it is in fact the case here, where you are saying to people all over this state, no. See that congressperson that we gave you last time? That representation that you had last time? We know better today what you need. We know better today what people in Dallas or Houston or Austin or San Antonio need. We, the government, we, the politicians in Austin who have never been to your community, are going to tell you emphatically the representation you deserve today. And we're just gonna do it. And I thought about things, I've spoken a lot about the Latino community, but this is really about all Texans. I love living in a Texas that is diverse, that is growing, that is vibrant, and our representation needs to reflect that. This map does not reflect that. And you have to try hard. You have to be deliberate. And you have to be intentional in your efforts not to reflect the diversity of the state. But members, it's not too late. You can vote no on this bill. You can say Texas is not going to go down this path. We are going to have a map that reflects the diversity of this state, the people of this state, the representation that people want in this state. Or you can add your names to that sullied list that has existed for decades and wonder about what those people were like. You need only look in the mirror. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for your continued patience throughout this most monumental debate. I rise today in opposition to this effort to conduct mid-decade redistricting as a proud Texan and as a proud native of South Texas in particular. South Texas in particular asked on multiple occasions to please bring live committee hearings and testimonies to the Valley so that the Valley could participate in this debate. Because as you know, to date, we are under the most economically disenfranchised, disconnected parts of the state. So to everyone who did not get to attend, please know that we continue to fight on your behalf. And again, I stand here in line with those Texans who firmly believe across Texas and the nation that people should choose their representatives and not the other way around. And to everyone in here who states, and to everyone listening who's thinking, well, gerrymandering, this is just politics. This is pure politics. This doesn't really affect me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, politics affects everything. The air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the books that we read or do not allow others to read. It affects everything, and to say otherwise is purely privilege that we cannot take for granted. I stand here today to say, if you are from South Texas, this is not about whether you are red or whether you are blue. This is about your voice and your representation. Our valley, South Texas, has unique needs to those comparable to anywhere else in the rest of the state. We're one of the only areas that has sea, land, and airports. So when you create districts in South Texas that sprawl over 200 miles, that stretch you out like string beans from the northern border of Mexico to the center of Texas, tell me, how is that fair and unique to your voice? Some of the districts that we've carved out in South Texas, for example, in CD 34, if anyone looks you in the face and says, this is good for South Texas, it is a lie. This proposed map removes over 294,000 Hispanic voices from South Texas and moves them to north of Nueces County. Again, almost 200 miles away from where you and your family live. That's a 38% reduction in Valley Hispanic voices. If anyone looks you in the face in South Texas and says that that is good for the Valley, it is a lie. And it was not made or drawn for you. The proposed map in CD 34 in South Texas reduces the number of registered voters with Hispanic surnames by nearly 15 percentage points. They are not going to look or sound like you. This plan would more than double the Anglo representation in South Texas. It would increase the Anglo voting population by 135%. They do not look, live, act, or speak like you. They do not know or understand your struggles. There is not a single restaurant, place, or even sporting event that you could go to in the Valley that is 135% Anglo. I've looked. No la vas a encontrar. It's not there. I also rise today to address this growing myth that is being spread. And I guess the thought is, if we keep saying it enough, maybe it will become true. If we keep telling the whole world Hispanics are voting more and more red, the Valley is turning more and more red, if I say it enough, maybe it'll be true. Ladies and gentlemen, this map, this proposed map, is evidence that that is a lie. Not only is it not true, they are so afraid of how fiercely you are about to rise up that we are building walls, carving lines, and destroying communities to make sure that you don't stand up and tell the nation that that is false. I cannot stand by idly and let them continue to perpetuate this lie. Son mentiras. I will never stop being proud of being from the Valley, and I will never stop fighting for our voice. And I'm telling you right now, please, if you respect or care for the Valley, vote no on this map. And when we continue to ask, why would you vote yes? And you say, because we can. I ask you to stop, pause, and think of all of the history, horrendous and otherwise, that we've been through because of the masquerade that might makes right. With this great power comes great responsibility, and we know that. It is our job to exercise restraint with our power. Please consider the power of restraint that you have right now for the people of Texas, and South Texas in particular. South Texas, they are drawing these lines because they are very, very afraid of Hispanic voices. And I think they should be.
Chair recognizes Ms. Johnson.
In 1972, Barbara Jordan ran for Congress. Texas, House District 18. When I looked around my house as a little girl, there was a painting of the Storytellers. It was her favorite painting that my dad had. Black men speaking to youth about their history and about their future. As I look around the room of white men, I think about my dad. And I love the head shake. And I love the nod. Because this is about racism. And if you can't hear it from them, then hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats. Because if you knew you could win this next election, you wouldn't be taking this effort to try to steal 5 seats from elected officials that members of color elected to represent them in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't be doing everything you can to take this coalition of diversity and stand up at the mic and say, why are we doing this? Because we can. And you shield your racism with your party, with ignorance and arrogance, to come up here and say, to be honest with you, I haven't read the bill from the other side. To be honest with you, I haven't talked to the lawyers to be bringing this before it. Because you think that people will give you grace on ignorance and arrogance around party, because you can't admit that the root of all of this is about racism and power. A power grab. A pure power grab. And so I'm gonna ask, don't shake your head, because I'm gonna give you a moment to prove what you mean behind that. Because when Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, hey boys, I need you to steal me almost 12,000 votes. To those men credit, they said, no, sir. We already know what Governor Abbott said. In a few minutes, we're gonna find out what y'all say. Vote no on this bill.
Chair recognizes Mr. Martinez Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, a lot has been said, and I think it's important that we reflect on it, and I'll try not to repeat it. But there are some things that you really need to know, and I think you already know this. Redistricting is a very hands-on process. You think about your own legislative experience and the idea that somebody would hand you a bill, tell you to file it and pass it, and not read it, not lay it out, not change it, not amend it, not let it come back in conference and negotiate it. But yet, on this congressional map, that's exactly what's happening here. And you may be okay with that, but I know that when this leaves the legislative chamber and leaves the executive mansion, it goes to a federal court. And I've said it all the time that we are all equal in federal court. And they're going to want to know about these procedures and these deviations from procedure and all of the things that have been done through acts or omissions. And I hope you have the answers, because I don't understand how we can have a map that eliminates 2 minority opportunity districts in Bexar County, and we have 2 members from Bexar County on the redistricting committee, but we couldn't have a public hearing in Bexar County, which is a lot closer to get to than Harris or Dallas County. That's a flag. I've never seen a redistricting process where there was a lawyer appointed to represent only the views of the chairman and not the committee. I've been here long enough to see that happen before. That dog didn't hunt very well. Chair Darby will tell you about that. When he tried to represent that the lawyer for the redistricting committee only spoke to the chairman, both sides threw the lawyers out and almost the chairman. And we could not resume again until both sides had their own counsel so they could work through this process. That didn't happen here. I know there are court records and there are discovery items from past redistricting that really gets into people's thoughts, gets into their emails, gets into their personal emails, their text messages, those Gmail accounts. And I think what's happening here is because of those lessons, we have now removed this redistricting process from outside of this building, take it somewhere else, let this map be drawn, dropped into the committee, maybe a tweak or 2, perfecting amendments, and then brought to this floor where it's not going to be debated. And the first real question you ask, the answer is I don't know. All I know, my intent is to create 5 new seats. Political performance is legal. Yes, it is, but it's not legal on the backs of the minority community. And those are the answers we have tried to get. But you can't hide all your intentions with the words political performance. You cannot say that this map is race blind and only reflects political performance, but you have 444 precinct cuts, exactly that many, because there's a 370 report that will tell you that if you've been through voting rights and voting rights litigation, you can run a report that'll tell you that there are 444 precinct cuts. That is not an accident. That is not a drafting error. That is a mission. That is a laser focus on drawing